Well, hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. This is the first live stream of 2026. Well, at home, that is. Of course, we have been on the ground. We have covered Patchway Police Station where we had the pot bashing Palestinians having a little tantrum. We also did the Bristol March for a general election, and we did the farmers' protest, which was the other day. That was amazing. And then yesterday, off the back of the farmers' protest, we did a hotel protest in Cheltenham. So very active on the ground out there. But this is the first official live stream here at home. So I would like to welcome all the new subscribers. I would like to say thank you to everyone who has supported me. We have got some amazing analytics, especially in regards to the views, the likes, and it's been actually quite hard to interact with everyone commenting on all the videos. So thank you so much. I also want to say this channel will always be demonetized by choice, regardless of how many subscribers I get. And it goes without saying, I don't want to be accused of being a grifter or anything like that. But not only that, I think it's important during a cost of living crisis, the time that we are in, there are a lot of people that are taking, quite frankly, the piss out of the situation we are in, making money off the back of it, making false promises to people, misleading them, and there's a lot of bad things going on. These people call themselves patriots. I'm not going to go into the who or the why or the when or what have you, but I'm going to keep this free. It is a hobby, and I do it not just for me. I don't do it for me. I do this for my kids. I do this because I am concerned about the future of my country. I'm concerned about the future for my children. And with the prognosis I have, like I've said before, I haven't got long left. And I want to make sure I do my bit and that they remember. They've got memories, so they'll have these videos to know what would have dad thought, what would have dad said, to go by. And yeah, I just want them to know that the very last years, instead of ticking off a bucket list, going places I've always wanted to go or meeting people I wanted to meet, I chose the time that I had to fight for them and their future. But anyway, we are going to go in and discuss everything to do with the ideology of Islam. Yes, this has been a long time coming, and it's a subject and an ideology that I'm very well learned in. It's something that is currently spreading like a plague across the West. America have taken the advantage point of prescribing the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. However, the United Kingdom have not yet done so. Why? I do not know. But they have a very heavy influence in universities. They have a very heavy influence on our society. And this is why you're seeing those people out bashing pans and pots wherever and whenever they can, calling for an intifada or global jihad, whilst pointing the finger at us, calling us Nazis. Yes, they would literally see the destruction of Israel and every Jew absolutely decimated if they had the opportunity. Yet they play to be the good guy. Anyway, without further ado, we have some videos to go through. Now, I just want to point out and make this very clear, and it's not because of legal reasons, because quite frankly, I couldn't give a fuck about Starmer or their policies or whatever blasphemy laws they want to bring in. I've gone past the point of caring anymore. I am a free man of England, and that is going to stay regardless what they do or what they say. But I'm saying this on a personal note because I have friends who are Muslims. This is not against Muslims as people. My views on Islam is on Islam, the ideology. I do not believe there is such thing as a moderate Islam. You have moderate Muslims that have been brought up in the West, that have lived in the West, that may not be able to flee their family or community because apostasy, it comes with a literal death sentence. And you would also be outed by the community as well. They would come down on you like a ton of bricks. And it's needless to say, nobody would do that. However, what I will say on a positive note is that ex Muslims make the best Christians. That is something that I have learned in my time of learning about this ideology, learning about Christianity. And this video may not be fully for you. If it's not, leave. You don't have to watch it. But I want to show some insight, some of the videos that I have put by for you to show what is taking place. Now, it's very important to show the truth, and that's what we are going to be doing this evening. So, the first clip we're going to go to is the dangerous truth about Islam and Britain. So, we're going to go on to here. Now, this guy, oh, why have I forgot his name all of a sudden? Absolute smart guy. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I can't remember his name. Connor Tomlinson, that's the guy. He is, I'll tell you, a great orator, and I can see him having some part in British politics in the next decade or two, most definitely. He is a very good speaker. But let's play a video of how he talks about Islam and its effect on Britain.
Country, but it's also how do we encourage lots of people who have not joined our national tribe, who have not fostered good relationships with us, who will not reproduce our civilization. How do we encourage those people to leave our country, go back to their own countries, hopefully build those up, we can check on them in a few hundred years, but leave us in peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Is Islam compatible with Britain?
Well, 53% of the British public, according to a recent poll published in The Telegraph, do not seem to think so. When asked, is Islam compatible with British values, I would prefer to use the term traditions, because that's a living thing. They said no, and that's been quite the taboo for our politicians to talk about for many decades across all parties. But I think ever since Elon Musk amplified the Pakistani grooming gang story to a global scale and then made it an unavoidable issue for Labour, people have started to realise that there are hostile communities in our country who do not think the same way as we do. They do not have the same individualist.
It's important to note, why do you think politicians are scared and too weak when it comes to talking about Islam? Why do you think? And it's all because of this whole idea of Islamophobia or being called a racist. Now, it's important to note, Islam is not a race. Anyone can be a Muslim. You only have to say your Shahada, a few meaningless words confirming that you believe in Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger. That is the be all and end all of it. You are a Muslim. No baptism, nothing like that. No catechism. It's just, that's it. You say those words in Arabic and in English, and you are a Muslim. You you try and leave, well, that's a different ball game. But let's continue with this.
Ethic that is born out of Britain's common law tradition, its Christian faith, and its nuclearized family structure. And we've had this going back to the Middle Ages, where the average age of marriage was, in its 20s, where in other parts of the world, it was still common for older men to marry children, for siblings to marry one another, to cousins to marry one another. And that still persists in the world today. There's been great work by an Oxford scholar.
And this is what they want here. They want that to happen here in the UK. Why do you think these grooming gangs did what they did to children as young as they were? It's not because of just culture or these are bad people. It's written in the texts. It's written in the verses. It's written in other Islamic literature, not just the Hadiths or the Quran, but Heavenly Ornaments, Reliance of the Traveller, another two books that I suggest anyone to read. Believe me, I'm going to be doing an expose on some of the verses in there, which helped shape form Sharia law, those books. So we'll be doing that shortly, but we'll continue with this.
Patrick Nash, looking into the case for banning cousin marriage, and he notes that in parts of the Islamic world, cousin marriage is still between like 40 and 80%, and it's still quite high in the Pakistani Biradiri clans that populate various towns and cities like Bradford, Luton, Blackburn, across the UK. And so what this means is a clannish mentality, a us versus them mentality, is entrenched by family structure and by faith. And I say faith because Islam mapped onto the existing clannish structures of 7th century Arabia and created a kind of super clan, an ummah.
So it being stronger than others. Now we hear this all the time, that chant. Whenever someone shouts Allahu Akbar, what do you think that means? Well, Allahu Akbar means God is great. Not just my God or God is great. That's what Muslims try and tell you, but it means that that God is greater than all other gods. So that includes the Christian God being that in the form of Christ. It includes whatever other gods people believe in, be it you're a Hindu, a Sikh, or whatever kind of faith that you have, it's their Allah. Now, I'm going to completely say it outright as it is. Some people, even Christians, will say, we believe in the same God. No, we do not. Our God does not have over 99 names, with one of them being the greatest deceiver. No, our God is not an author of confusion. In fact, our God doesn't put satanic verses in any of our holy texts and then removes them. So the whole idea of Islam being the greatest religion, it being masculine, it being the religion of all, it has to have this conquer element to it, where anything under it is either weaker or needs to be destroyed. That's why you see so many attacks. You see all this globalization of Islam, enclaves being put everywhere. And that's why some of them don't want to mix with us. They believe they're superior to us. And if we lived under their rule, we would be paying what they call the jizya, a tax which is put on non Muslims to pay them to look after us, keep us secure. And we would live lives where we would have to wear certain colored tags like they did in the past. This is historic. Jews had to wear a certain, I think it was yellow, a color to show that they were Jews, and Christians also. In fact, in Lebanon right now, there are children with crosses tattooed on their wrists so that they can prove that they are Christian. So this is where we're heading. But Islam wants to be the one and only religion in the world. That's the prophecy of Muhammad. That is the goal of Islam, to globalize Sharia and to be one ummah across the world.
Which united all of these families under one banner, one Muslim race. And so it extended the remit of moral consideration beyond just the family, beyond just the clan, but to fellow Muslims. But unfortunately, not to other faiths. There are multiple verses in the Quran and Hadith where Muhammad says that you should not make common cause or friends with Jews and Christians. You should strike at the necks of unbelievers where you find them. You should subject them to a jizya, kind of protection tax, rendering them second-class citizens. That was imposed upon Jewish tribes in Medina when Muhammad made the hijrah, the migration from Mecca to Medina, found them in their own lands. They rejected him as a prophet and Messiah. And he said, right, well, we will subject these people to harsh and violent penalties for being apostates, for being enemies of Allah. And so if this mentality that you can't make friends with people outside your family, your clan, your faith, and your ummah persists in these areas.
And I'll tell you exactly what they did. They beheaded 800 Jews in one day. Muhammad was part of that. Yet, you'll see the likes of Shabana Mahmood tell you that Islam is a religion of peace. Sadiq Khan, diversity is our strength. how are we supposed to coincide with people who believe in such ideology? These verses are in their holy scripture, being read and preached at the pulpit of every mosque or masjid in the United Kingdom or wherever in the world. How on earth are we supposed to, with common sense, be able to live with people that have such faith in these verses? Now, some people, like they say, Tommy Robinson has said it, pick the Quran or pick at the Quran as if it's a picnic, a buffet. They like the verses that are kind, but reject the verses that are harsh. Whereas the be all and end all of it all is, most of it is pretty much harsh. And the whole idea of being a Muslim is to imitate Muhammad as to the best of your ability. He is the best example to follow of all mankind for all time. Ask any Muslim that, they will tell you that is true. He is the best imitation of a human to follow. Compare the life of Muhammad to the life of Christ, and well, you can see who pretty much with just common sense alone, I think a child would be able to decide who would be better to follow as an example. Let's continue.
In Britain, as documented by Muslims themselves, like Ed Hussein in the book Among the Mosques, then it's hard to say that we can have the same civilization if we keep inputting this mentality, this theory of mind, this faith into our country, and the demographic grows where now Muhammad is the most common baby name for newborns in Britain. I think it means that we're going to have a deeply culturally unrecognizable nation if this trend continues.
What I'm trying to say is there's lots of moderate Muslims who people would say, look, they don't believe the stuff that you're talking about. They are, basically integrated into British society, and they don't view us as all evil infidels. They want to slit our throats or something.
So Ed Hussein holds this opinion himself, a second-generation immigrant and Muslim, but he estimates as a former jihadist that about 3% of the global population themselves are jihadists. He used caliphs, the people that want to see the reconstruction of the caliphate. Given the Muslim population, that's still 50 million people worldwide, and we're currently importing lots of them from the third world, from the Muslim world, and not exactly screening them for their views at the border. So we are undoubtedly...
If a caliphate came about today, and the Muslims believe they're awaited Mahdi, which is someone who they're waiting for, this religious leader that comes to earth and sorts out everything and gets the Muslims together, and this whole battle goes on against the Jews, where even a tree will say, "Here, a Jew is hiding behind me," and there's loads of nonsense about this. I mean, there's talking ants, spying birds, floating mountains, the sun setting in a muddy pool, sperm being made in your ribs. There's all sorts of things. Muhammad riding a unicorn to the moon in Jerusalem, Moses punching the angel death in the face. It just don't end. The the fairy tales. Anyway, this awaited Mahdi, if they genuinely believed he was here, there would be chaos. Every single Muslim, be it moderate or radical, would turn to the Mahdi, join the caliphate, and there would be hell to pay. So let's just say someone appears and says, "I am the Mahdi," and the majority of the Middle East chooses to follow that person, and it gets sent to all the masjids or Islamic centers across the world that the Mahdi is here. We must follow his orders. We must do what he says. They will refer to the Islamic text, the Islamic sources and teachings on what to do next, which is jihad. You have three choices when it comes to jihad. Become Muslim if you're an infidel or a non-believer. Pay the jizya if they let you. Or the third choice, which isn't really a choice, that's it. So there is no such thing as moderate Islam. Like I said, there are Muslims who have adopted this Western way of thinking. They are culturally westernized now and have grew up in the United Kingdom or the United States. They have grew up around seeing what we see and experiencing what we experience. They have not lived out in the Middle East. And some people will say, well, what about Saudi Arabia? What about Dubai? What about all these other places that are, quite peaceful and modern and lovely. Well, they're different sects. So it's like the Protestant church, you have different forms of it, the Methodist, Baptist. They all have different kind of traditions, different belief systems. And you can say that Saudi Arabia and Dubai, they have adopted this Western way now. They can see that this whole 1400 years, that through those 1400 years, all that conquering by the sword has done is caused nothing but bloodshed and chaos for them. And they are continuously and constantly going to have countries, Western countries, at their throats if they do not change the way they think. That's why they've reformed a lot. That's why they have made changes with the laws. So you have different sects, and they are a tiny sect compared to the whole Sunni idea, the Sunni ideology. You'll find most genuinely and generally believe in, like I said, Muhammad being the best imitation of mankind. Every Muslim will agree that is true. So if you can say that he is the best person to follow, he is the imitation, he is the perfect example for all men and all women to follow, does that mean it's okay to go and kill 800 Jews in a day? Does that make it okay to marry a 6-year-old and then abuse her sexually when she's 9? Does it make it okay to have cousin marriage and other things as well? Some of the violence, some of the things that are preached within these texts are heinous, evil, and they should be exposed, which they are. In fact, the internet itself is wiping out Islam at a scale like it's unprecedented. The Crusades couldn't even keep up with what the internet is doing right now, especially across the East and the Middle East. People have access to the internet, to YouTube, where they can see these verses being called out. They can see a Christian apologetics calling out and exposing Islam, the likes of God Logic, Sam Shamoon, David Wood. They're on the scene. There are so many. Dr. J. Smith is an amazing preacher, Christian preacher, who has debunked and brought to light a lot of the lies and the deceit that it lies within Islam. So anyway, let's continue with this. But like I said, there is no such thing as a moderate Islam. There's moderate Muslims, but there is not a moderate version of Islam. There is Islam and Islam only.
Importing and home growing jihadists. I would say we don't want to risk our entire civilization on hoping that they are the moderate mystic sect, the much smaller sect of Islam than their Sunni or Shia or Salafist counterparts, and hope that they just don't read their own texts too closely. People might hear Sunni, Shia, Khalifist, Salafist rather. Salafists are the counterparts to the Sufis. This means that they want to live as closely and authentically a life akin to the Prophet Muhammad from the 7th century. So they wage a war on what they call fitna, and this is a word meaning temptation, occasions to sin. So everything from going on social media and in mixed sex spaces to pornography, alcohol, shaking hands with women. All of these things are to be crusaded against, to commit jihad against. And jihad, if you look at the root word in the Quran, is most associated with either violence, so fighting, or militias, fighters, the mushahadeen. That's where it crops up most commonly. So there should be a jihad against all temptations to sin, which actually means that lots of British-born Western Muslims who live in segregated enclaves see the Western society around them. And this can be a further cause of radicalization. This is what Ayaan Hirsi Ali in her book Heretic calls cocooning.
And what they'll say as well, which is a form of taqiyya, which taqiyya is to lie, to be able to lie within Islam, to further propagate the goals of Islam, to globalize it. So you can lie, and you're not allowed to call out any other Muslims for their bad behavior or their sins. If you do, then it's a no-go. It's taught in the Quran. You're not supposed to talk badly or talk about the sins or problems of another Muslim. So this is why you never see, because everyone says when a attack happens somewhere, a terrorist attack, they'll say, Why aren't the community calling this out? Why are they not out? If they're saying they're moderates and that they're against it, why do you never see them out on the streets going berserk, saying this is not us, this is not Islam? You don't, for the simple reason they're not allowed to. If they spoke against any of their brothers or sisters in the faith, it is haram to do so.
And the only way to, if they have been westernized and they revert back to the faith, the only way to absolve themselves of sin is something like a jihadist attack, a suicide bombing. It's not like in the Christian tradition where you have things like confession or forgiveness. It's more you need to demonstrate your submission to the faith. And this is why caliphate, the belief in the caliphate coming, is so prominent among even second-generation British-born Muslims. We saw the Henry Jackson Society polling, which is very pessimistic, because it says 52% want to.
So the caliphate is actually taught, it's a prophecy. And we all know, if you look in the history of Islam, the Muslims, instead of waiting for prophecies to take place like normal people would, they make the prophecies happen. I can give you an example of Constantinople when it was Constantinople. They forced so many times. They tried and tried and tried again to take down Constantinople. Eventually, they succeeded, but it was a prophecy. But they had so many attempts and it took so much for them to do so. It's also prophesied that they would destroy the Roman Empire. There are so many prophecies that are in the Quran that they feel the need that we have to be a part of this. Allah can't do his work, of course. They have to do it for him. They are slaves of this God. Whereas with us, Christians, it is Christ that washes our feet, Christ that bears our sins, not the other way round. Christ serves us and died for us. That is the main difference. And look at the age gap. We talk about things being appropriate centuries ago, yet even before Muhammad, when you go back a further 500 years back from that, half a millennia, Christ is teaching about love, forgiving your enemies, praying for those who curse you. So you can't use that kind of logic. And back to Takia. Takia, like I said, is a form of lying. You can lie. I believe Shabana Mahmood, Sadiq Khan are perfect representations of those who are trying to further the goals of Islam. Is Zia Yusuf and Layla Cunningham one of them too? Perhaps. You won't know. It's a Trojan horse. After all, you have to be on guard. And that is why so many reform voters at the moment are just not happy with seeing Layla Cunningham standing as mayor. We've got a Muslim mayor. We have seen what's happened with a Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan. We want someone British. We want someone who is going to undo the damage that has been caused. If you look at London, it's a British minority for a start. It doesn't represent London as well it used to be pre 1997. I would even say 2010. It was a lot better than what it is now. Now it's destroyed. Look at Whitechapel. Even the signs are not in English. And there are so many other examples that you can go by. It's absolutely appalling. London, Birmingham, those cities have turned into places that do not resemble Britain in any way, shape, or form. So this whole Takia thing, this whole putting a facade on to actually get into government, to infiltrate and get into the government to be able to change laws. The blasphemy laws is one thing. Again, Islamophobia is a term coined by the Muslim Brotherhood themselves to try and propagate and prevent us, those who do not believe in Islam, from being able to talk against it, about it, to criticize their actions. We cannot do anything. So that's why those laws, it's important for them to get that through the back door so that they can further their goals, which is to turn a Western country into an Islamic one. Will UK become the first Islamic state? I don't know. People are asking that question right now. It's at the door. In fact, there is a Christian preacher in America that has spoken about this who is friends with someone in the House of Lords that has disclosed to him. I need to find this video. I've been looking for it for ages. I've shown it before. I had it on my last channel. There have been already terms of surrender drawn up in case such incident happens, in case a caliphate takes over or a military coup takes place within London. There are plans already to infiltrate the police system, to infiltrate the military, to infiltrate the government. It's all in their 100-year plan, the memorandum by the Muslim Brotherhood, which is it was exposed, I believe, in in the 90s, and they've got it. They hold it in Israel in one of the museums, and they've got it in America too. There have been many good speakers and preachers that have spoke about this. This woman, this Lebanese woman, I can't remember her name, but she is an expert in this. She's spoken about this as well. So the way of them getting into this government, I believe, is just. I believe that any religion that has any political kind of system within it should not be able to have any kind of voting or any kind of say in what politics does in a Western democracy. I just don't. I just don't see how you can let that be. But we have. It's what we've got. Whether some of the people that are in are genuine or not, I do not know. But we will see. Only time will tell.
Ban depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. A third want Sharia law and Islam to become the dominant religion in the UK. And up to 3/4 of them believe that Hamas did nothing wrong on October 7th when they committed those heinous crimes, those genocidal acts against Jews. And that's most common among 18 to 30 aged, university educated, British born Muslims, which means we've got a cross-generational radicalization problem. And the Muslim community elders themselves are not helping with this. We've had Dr. Taj Hargay speak to Martin Daubney on GB News about how mosques and madrasas are preaching to Muslim men to see white women and girls as second-class citizens because of their supposed sexual promiscuity by Islamic standards. And so this has fed into things like the grooming gangs or just generally disparaging views of their British host majority neighbors. And also, we've seen in Ed Hussein's book that no matter whether or not you're a Sunni or a Shia, that the difference being that both of them want a caliphate, but the Shias believe that a 12th century descendant of Muhammad is going to be sort of come back, reincarnated, and act as Messiah to actually lead the caliphate properly. It's kind of like a family feud, really. No matter what dynamic you fall alongside, the Muslim community elders feel either sufficiently compromised by the more radical elements of their mosques, or they themselves are just biding their time and waiting to fold themselves into the caliphate, that when Ed, in his book, pressed a prominent pseudonymized Bradford Muslim on whether or not a caliphate is coming, he said that, well, I just tell my congregation, bide your time, learn your Quran, get good jobs, enter the office of state, and eventually the caliphate will come. And so if we have a population, whether violently or even peacefully awaiting the day that our country becomes politically, demographically, religiously unrecognizable, I don't see how we can make peace or even common cause with that. Because final note, I have seen.
Just imagine that day. Just imagine. So it's already been projected that by 2040 that we, as British, are going to be a minority in our country. Okay, if you want to go by other statistics that are a bit more leaning to the left, we are saying 2063. Still not far away. And by 2063, the majority of the country will be, by the way things are going now, the way Islam is growing and the family and so on and so forth. If we do not put a stop to it, Islam will be the majority religion of the country. And what does that look like? Well, just like Connor Tomlinson said, they're biding their time. Moderates, remember there's no such thing, and radicals alike. And there will be no choice. So, for instance, I have Muslim friends who are very westernized. They would call themselves moderate Muslims. Some of them even patriots. And even they would be forced by their families or by some way to join that caliphate, to commit jihad. If they genuinely believe in Allah and that Islam is the true faith, regardless how they look at it, if the prophecy comes to light and a caliphate, a final caliphate comes, and there is orders from the Middle East telling them to go and do certain acts or commit jihad, what do you think will take place? Do you think they're going to go, no, no, these are our friends? Of course not. The goal is it's God first. Even Christians, we put God before anything else. That's what we should do. We are told to do so. Jews, the same. Anyone who is religion is supposed to put God before anything else. But when it comes to Islam, this is even like more intense if you do not, because the eyes that are on you to do so is unreal. And if anyone suspects any different, you to them, in their eyes, are an apostate. You're a traitor, a backstabber, and you need to be dealt with. So it's scary, and it is. I am genuinely concerned for the future. I'm not going to be here soon. In fact, in the next decade, I most definitely won't be here unless God wills it. However, I am genuinely scared for the future of Britain and the future for my children. This involves them. This involves you. You will be alive, most probably, when this takes place. It's worrying. It is definitely worrying.
Members on the right, whether it's Tucker Carlson or even just some Christians that I've spoke to that are more concerned with the rise of secularism than they are with Islam in our country, they think that Muslims are our natural allies because they're conservative on things like trans issues and sex education in schools. That's just not the case, because if you might have a common enemy in one moment, but if you play out their ethos, as we can see in all the Muslim countries around the world, you might luck out and get a civilization like Abu Dhabi, which means you can live there relatively peacefully as a non-Muslim, or you might get someone like Pakistan or Yemen, and either way, you don't get Britain.
Do you think there's been a certain naivety, or is it an ignorance around Islam and Muslims, and when it comes to mass migration into the West, from both conservatives and liberals who have supported this, who've welcomed them with open arms, who view Islam as the religion of peace, and basically they can integrate into our.
Queers for Palestine, a perfect example. I dare any of you to go to Palestine right now. I'll pay for your plane ticket. Comment on the video with your email address, and I will actually go with you to Palestine. We'll go to Israel. We'll get over the checkpoints, and I will gladly walk with you and film you walk through Palestine or Gaza, wherever you want, Ramallah, Jenin, wherever you want to go, even the West Bank with a pride flag. I'll pay for it, and I'll come and record it.
Society is no problem, and okay, there's a few extremists, but the vast majority are equivalent to you and I in terms of culture and moral outlook.
Yeah, we've had a lot of politicians like Theresa May saying they have a favorite Quran verse, or not long after the September 11 attacks, 9/11 in 2001, George Bush couldn't understand, famously, why they hate us, why they fight us. Islam means peace. We want exactly the same thing. And a lot of this is premised on the anthropology of the blank slate, the idea that deep down we are fundamentally all the same, that we're just fungible units driven apart by having to have been born in a different country or subjected to a different education system, or not being as economically prosperous as one another, often by the injustices of colonialism, racism, and empire. And that means that the state can rectify these injustices if it just brings all these people into one place. If it lowers a few Union Jacks, puts up a few Palestine flags, and doesn't offend the newcomers, then we'll all become this sort of indistinguishable grey goo tribe singing John Lennon's Imagine. And unfortunately, this unilateral multiculturalism inflicted upon the British people has not been to their benefit. They've never asked for it. And because of the violence emanating from certain sects of Islam that are disproportionately present in Britain, For example, the Blair government even observed that the majority of Britain's mosques are Deobandi sects. This comes from Deoband in the 19th century, an area just outside of Delhi in India that tried to resist the British Empire, and so fostered a certain sect of Islam that is specifically having an ethnic and historical grudge against the British people. That is the majority of Britain's mosques, unfortunately, largely due to foreign funding and foreign trained imams as well. I think people fail to understand that this unilateral multiculturalism has disarmed the British in having an identity that is sufficiently strong and incorporative to the few handful of people that do want to come along and join our national tribe, to push back on this ideology, this political faith that has imperial designs on our country and doesn't like us because we are apostates, because we are ethnically outside of the Ummah, and because we will not submit to their final revelation. And if I may, the final thing I will say is that they fail to grasp a theory of mind of just how even peaceful, moderate Muslims just have different cultural practices to us. So Ayaan Hirsi Ali, when she was an interpreter in the Netherlands, she would explain how Somali families would frequently litter or are late to places or allow their children to run riot. And when they were challenged on this, they would say, Inshallah, it's God's will. And the belief is that everything is predetermined because Allah is all-powerful, He is all-knowing, He set the universe into motion. And so there's a kind of fatalism that creeps in. There's the inability to plan for the long term. There's the unwillingness to maintain privacy or public hygiene in public spaces. And so it just creates a very different, lower trust, dysfunctional civilization that we, the British, it's not ergonomic to us, and it's not the kind of civilization I want to raise my kids in.
When it comes to the solution to some of these problems you're talking about, obviously we know...
Solution. There is one. Prohibit. It's simple. It is as simple as that. Now, I know a lot of people are going to kick me for this. They're going to say, oh, it's an Abrahamic faith. We have expression and freedom of religion. We have, freedom of expression. I'm sorry, but there have been 50,000, if not more, recorded terrorist attacks that have taken place since September the 11th alone, recorded. And you can go and have a look at answeringislam.com. They're all the statistics, all the stories, all the attacks are on there. They're all accounted for. And it also tells you what's happened recently and where a recent attack has happened. Many are going on right now. Real genocides taking place in Congo, Sudan, Nigeria, that the BBC and the ITV Sly News will never talk about, by the way. They'll always talk about Gaza. There was, in fact, more people killed in one day in Nigeria than there was in the whole 2-year period of the war between Israel and Palestine. But yet, no outrage. No one out there, no lefties, no people out there calling it out. And yet, why are they being persecuted and killed? Jihad. They're Christians. They're non-believers. They're apostates. We've got to get rid of them. Children also. Women as well. Some of the most horrific and heinous things you can think of are taking place right now across the world. Just because they do not believe in this revelation, as Connor Tomlinson puts it. But let me tell you, there is a way, there is a solution, and one country will do it soon. I believe it will be the Netherlands. I believe it will be because of Geert Wilders and how he is at the moment. A country, a Western nation, possibly the USA in the next couple of years, if things get tasty soon, because it is getting tasty. I do believe at some point a country is going to have enough and say, we're not having this ideology preached here any longer. That's it. We're done. It's responsible for the killing of so many people across history. And it hasn't just stayed in history. It's currently happening, and it plans to do even more in its revelation. It plans to and is prophesied to do even more. It is supposed to ethnically cleanse the Jews. It is written in mandates and manifestos of Islamic political parties in the Middle East, the PLO. The Hamas charter has the surahs, it has the verses from hadiths on this, how they're going to ethnically cleanse the Jews in Israel and how they are going to destroy the West. In the Muslim Brotherhood's memorandum, their plan, their 100-year plan, which I think we're 50 years in, so we're halfway there. They are achieving the goals that they have set out to do. And it was Ayan Hirsi Ali, that is the person who actually exposes the Muslim Brotherhood, which we'll get into. I will find it, and you'll hear about it, about the plans that are there and taking place right now as we speak to infiltrate the political structure of a democratic nation, use taqiyya to benefit and further the cause of Islam. So you can pretend to be, and so there was a verse also in the hadiths where it says, love them with your mouths, but hate them in your hearts. Yes, it's in that kind of wording, but that's how it is. It's to hate them deep inside, but to just pretend that you get on with them. Just pretend, because it's the cause. It's the cause and the will of Allah that every nation must be subjugated to that faith, to Sharia, which is why people are now waking up. They are seeing the threat. They are seeing the dangers of this ideology. And what does the globalists do and the leftists do? Well, instead of trying to answer our problems or hold a debate or address the elephant in the room, they sweep it under the carpet, try and bring in blasphemy laws, tell you that there is nothing to worry about, everything's okay, and import millions of people that may actually have these views into our countries and tell us we have to accept it. And if you dare say anything, even in the slightest, just even on social media, you get banged up for hurty words. If that's not totalitarian bullshit, then what is? We have had more arrests here in the United Kingdom for social media posts than in any other dictatorship on this planet. More than Russia and North Korea. How is this a democratic nation? We are moving into what happened with Iran, Egypt, Afghanistan. This is what is taking place in the United Kingdom. The unholy alliance of the radical left and Islam are holding hands to destroy democracy within. And they want us to just sit there and take it. It's not happening. Especially it won't happen in America. Well, they've got the First Amendment. They can look after themselves. Or is it the Second Amendment? Whatever it is, where they can actually have things to protect them. Whereas we, the British, well, if we don't wake up and stand up bravely and call this out, then we're screwed. And Nigel Farage has already rolled over, if you like, tail between his legs. When he was questioned about this and the demographic change, he said, if we try to challenge Islam in 50 years' time, we will lose. That was his own words. Yet, we want to vote for him. People on the so-called right or center right, that's what they want. They want reform. We need a more radical approach because unless, and I believe this is what will happen. Here's my predictions. Reform UK will get the next general election. It may have a coalition with Advance if Elon Musk puts a cash injection into Ben Habib's party. But if not, and if not with a coalition with the Tories or another party, after that, when people start realizing how real this is and how serious this is and that it's still continuing, and that is when you will see a party like UKIP or Britain First rise to the top and people will vote for it in the election after. Mark my words, it will happen. And so will the prohibition of this ideology at some point in Europe or maybe even the USA. Because if you look at what's happening in Texas right now, and is it Minneapolis? Well, you got New York as well. There's a few places in America that are currently going through problems where they're trying to build mega cities where no infidel or apostate or any non-believer can actually enter. You won't be allowed. In democratic countries, is this unheard of? Let's continue.
We have millions of Muslims across the West, particularly in Western Europe. What are the solutions? What are the policy solutions? What are the policy levers that we can pull if you're Farage, if you're Rupert Lowe, if you're whoever? I'm assuming you want to ban halal. I'm assuming you want to copy the French, ban on the burqa. Of course, there have been some issues with both of those policies in Europe where, you try and ban halal and they'll just import it from somewhere else, or they'll go around it in some other way. Try and ban the burqa, and that has its own issues in France where I don't think that's been particularly effective at discouraging.
That's another point as well. I've seen many people, patriots, in fact, they say, "I know a way we can go about this, and that's if we ban halal food, everyone will remigrate. They will leave." No, they won't. Just like he said, they'll import the meat. They'll find a way, or they'll just do it in their back gardens. They're already helping themselves. Migrants already are helping themselves to our swans, ducks, pigeons, you name it.
Muslims, there's still a huge Muslim population in France, and ever growing. So yeah, talk about some of those policy solutions and maybe some of the challenges that you might pose.
So I would agree with those policy solutions. However, they're only ever dealing with second-order effects, which is you don't need to pick up the pieces of a fragmented culture if you aren't driving the demographic fodder that causes these problems in the first place. So we should close our doors to the Muslim world. Just as Trump has placed sensible travel bans on Muslim countries with a propensity for terrorism, we should have an immigration red list that says we want to discriminate via not just economics, not just numbers, but by cultural compatibility. And so historically, Western Europe, parts of Eastern Europe that are Christian and very anti-communist these days. Japan, South Korea, Israel, the United States, the Anglosphere, they all might be compatible in limited numbers to come over, get married, contribute to the economy. We might be happy to have some of those people here, but the rest of the world, no, we must shut our doors to them. As far as dealing with those cultural practices, I think they would constitute a sufficient deterrent to encourage some people to leave, and you'd need to pair that with removing indefinite leave to remain. You'd need to pair that with removing the subsidies that the likes of the Conservatives and Keir Starmer have provided to Britain's mosques.
Why? Why not just prohibit the ideology from being practiced? Wouldn't that be easier? Do you not think if Britain kickstarted and is the mother of democracy, shared it with the world through the British Empire, that we cannot, as the mother of, I would say, the world, show president, stand upon the world stage, as brave as we are, or used to be, and be the first to prohibit this ideology? Just say enough is enough. We're not going to make 20 or 30 other laws to continue, because it will just continue happening. There will always be an attack. Why should people keep suffering? You never hear of attacks because of Buddhism, Sikhism, Hinduism, or anything else. So why? Tell me why. One good reason, apart from the fact that we have this freedom of religion. I would say this is not a religion. It's an ideology. It is classed, and you can class it with using the definition of a cult, and it has a political structure to it. Just like we wouldn't allow communism or socialism. Well, that's another story. It is currently a theme at the moment, which is they won't openly admit to it, the likes of Keir Starmer, but they are communists and socialists. But we're supposed to be against it. We're supposed to be a democracy. So why can we not just do the easiest and most simple thing? Just prohibit it. Close down the mosques. Close down any Islamic infrastructure. And just say it's not going to happen. We will kindly give you a ticket to whichever country that you would like to go to. There are 52 Islamic nations, if not more, that we can send you to. Take your pick. or you can stay, but we're not going to allow you to practice this no more. It is that easy. That's what I would do if I was a leader of a political party. Sadly, I'm not. But there are too many politicians that are too scared to say so, too scared to even contemplate having that discussion. And this is where England needs to find its courage again. You always see in the comments on videos that ever discuss this topic, people commenting saying the words ban Islam in capitals. Always. It is genuinely what people want. And that's why reform voters are kicking off at the fact that Layla Cunningham has just joined the party, that another one has, and Zia Youssef is the chairman or the head of policies. What happens when Farage goes? You know, it is worrying times.
Not just round-the-clock security, but financing Islamic charities, including things like the Muslim Council of Britain, who are meant to have a Whitehall engagement ban placed upon them, but ministers of both parties have been to their dinners. I think we should stop subsidizing the stay of economically unproductive people in the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community who cannot pay their own way, who subsist in social housing, who live off child benefit. I mean, don't forget, the Manchester Arena bombers' parents were continuing to receive social housing and benefits even after they returned to Libya. Why are we paying for people to be in this country that not only don't contribute something, but actively harm our children, our women, our family members? I think it's abhorrent. I think all of this is on the table now, that especially Elon Musk has kind of thrown a brick through Britain's Overton window by just saying remigration is a necessary policy. Now, we can call it what we like. I know that term has been used by parties and fringe figures with checkered pasts, and so people, even if they support the spirit of the policy, they've refrained from using it. But the main topic of conversation is now not just who is the most credible to carry out mass deportations of illegal immigrants and uphold the law and move criminal foreign nationals from our country, but it's also how do we encourage lots of people who have not joined our national tribe, who have not fostered good relationships with us, who will not reproduce our civilization. How do we encourage those people to leave our country, go back to their own countries, hopefully build those up, we can check on them in a few hundred years, but leave us in peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
What about the argument from some who say that, look, Muslims and other immigrants, they make Britain a nicer place. They make Britain a more interesting place. They make us more diverse, which is a strength, of course. That's where Rishi Sunak famously held up that little coin. They give us fantastic cuisine, food, and, we've basically got this mundane kind of
We've got the recipes. Thank you very much.
stale, pale, male island.
As James cleverly once said.
As James cleverly once used that phrase. And importing people from around the world makes Britain more interesting and colourful and fantastic.
I do not have such a low opinion of my country and my culture. If I wanted to sample foreign cuisine, as Rowan Atkinson once joked, I think we have the recipes. And so we are more than capable of cooking it for ourselves.
There we go. You just said it. We've got the recipes. Hey, this is what I don't like, right? So the left, it makes me cringe. The political left, they want this utopia where every ideology, culture, everyone just mingles in. Everyone's happy holding hands. Yay, we love each other. It's just never going to happen, right? It won't. You've got people with ideologies that just cannot coexist with others. It's that easy. However, I remember when I was young, and I'm 34, and this makes me feel old saying this. But the whole idea of going abroad or going on holiday to another nation, to go and visit another country or so on and so forth, was to experience their culture, to experience what they have, their traditions, to go and try their food, to go and look at some of the history they have and go and celebrate it with them. So you would go temporarily, have a break, and you had that freedom to choose. You had the freedom to be able to say whether you wanted to or didn't. Quite simply, if you wanted to stay at home here in England and go visit places in Britain, go to Wales, go to Scotland, Ireland. You could just simply do that and just travel around the United Kingdom. Whereas if you actually did want to go and see a bit of Islamic architecture or go and experience some food from Punjab or anywhere else like that, you had the freedom and the choice to do so. But instead, what the government and the globalists have done is forced all these cultures and religions and ideologies and people into democratic lands where we had our own traditions, our own culture, our own beliefs and food and so on and so forth. Those freedoms are gone now. Like I said, go and look at some of the places in the United Kingdom. Some of them are even no-go zones. There are even signs in Birmingham in some streets that says no infidels or non-believers are allowed to enter after 8 p.m. Someone sent me a picture of this because I told them I didn't believe them a few weeks ago. It's unreal. There are no-go zones. In Australia, there's no-go zones. This is supposed to be our land. Christianity is supposed to be the religion of Britain. Yet, even atheists will say, oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. It is. And it's the Judeo-Christian principles and values that formed democracy. Britain was the mothership of that and shared it with the world. And if we don't go back to it, and luckily there has been a surge and a revival in Christianity, we'll go on sects on another live stream as to which is the right church, so on and so forth. And we'll also go on about theism versus atheism, so on. But that's another subject for another day. But we had that choice. We no longer have it. It's just forced. And if you don't like it, then tough. Deal with it. And our traditions, our culture are stomped on and stamped out. You can no longer say, Merry Christmas, it's Happy Holidays. Why? Because it will offend someone. However, Eid Mubarak, Happy Ramadan, and you have to celebrate it. You have no choice. It's there in our streets. It's there wherever you go, on our buses, on our billboards. You have to see it. You have no choice. Our traditions, culture, and way of life is being completely diminished, destroyed, thrown out the window by our own elite, by our own governance. That is why people are protesting. That is why people are moving to the right. The Overton window hasn't just been, as Connor said, moved because Elon threw a brick through it, the window, to smash it. It has been moved because of the change we have seen over the past 2 decades, if not longer, in some places. And that's why a lot of people now are looking at Tommy Robinson thinking the whole time, this guy was right. Because where he was expressing his views from someone who was experiencing this in Luton Town, and he grew up with this and seen what took place and how quickly and rapidly things changed, everyone outside was thinking, no, it never happened here. What's he talking about? What's he on about? That man, he must be an Islamophobe. He must be a racist. Yet, look at last September when he was there in London, how many people took to the streets? People have lost their faith in our government. They have lost their faith in our mainstream media. They have lost their faith in anything to do with the power or the establishment of Britain. The judiciary, the policing system, everything's corrupt. And it is completely against the indigenous and native population. Sorry for ranting.
This doesn't mean that we need to exclude literally every person of a foreign extraction. It does mean that we can be friendly to those people, but I just don't believe that Britain is a tabula rasa, a kind of empty template on which other cultures, more vibrant and exotic and mysterious cultures, are stitched. And so if people, if the sort of anywheres of the world, in David Goodhart's conception, find other cultures more exotic, and hey, traveling around the world is an Anglo pastime. That's why we did it as part of the empire. It wasn't just a morally benevolent for other people, even though it largely was. If they want to visit more exotic locations around the world, okay, travel there or move there. Please stop trying to demographically and culturally terraform my country when the majority of people have never asked for this. And it is very much a luxury belief. Danny Finkelstein wrote in the Times recently that we shouldn't turn to a politics of grievance in retaliation to mass migration. And he said, from his ivory tower, he's a very privileged man, and off his own back, of course, he said that he doesn't understand why people just can't take them as they meet them. Again, he's very individualistic, whereas lots of immigrants are more clannish. And he said that the benefits of mass migration, the benefits of diversity, and diversity only ever means non-native, non-English, foreign, are just obvious goods to him. And that's probably because he has lots of immigrant friends, he goes to lots of posh restaurants, and he lives in a leafy suburb that is relatively homogenous and high trust. This is a classic luxury belief. It is advancing a policy which you will never bear the costs of. And I don't think the victims of the Pakistani grooming gangs would be able to come up with many benefits of diversity that they themselves have lived around. I don't think the people living in Blackburn that told Ed Hussein on the street, there are no-go areas where my sons have been beaten up by Asian gangs, would be able to say the same thing. I don't even think that the various ethnic minority communities that come into clash when it's black and Asian gangs that war over honor and territory would say that importing one group or the other has been particularly beneficial to them. I think that we have heard for many years about how we have an overabundance of racism in our country. Okay, fine. Let's say for the sake of argument that this is the case. I don't think it is, but let's say for the sake of argument it is the case. Then let's not import extra, unnecessary tribal conflicts and foreign criminals into our country that put the existing people of our country at risk. Because every single crime, every single act of conflict, every single act of cultural degradation committed by an outsider is a choice. It is a policy choice, and that means that it is a policy choice that can be undone, reversed, and sent back.
But don't we have a moral obligation towards our former colonial empire? Because we invaded them, we conquered them, and it's only right that we let those people.
No, it's in the past. I didn't do it. My dad didn't do it. So why on earth do I owe anyone anything? No. It is what it is. Every single country has been in some part of an empire or was an empire at some point. Why is it only the British that has to apologize? Why is it that the left believe that Palestine should be for Palestinians and that all of a sudden Greenland should be for Greenlanders? Now Trump's involved. But when you say England for the English or Britain for the British, oh, you're a racist. How does that make sense? It's only white people that can be racist. Only white people that can be racist nowadays. And that's been the view. That it has always been the view. You can never say it's never the other way round. And we're seeing literally within our country, within democracies, racism being portrayed on white people, white children. There are even job vacancies. And there was a situation where a nurse in the NHS who was more qualified than another nurse wasn't given a job. She had more experience, more qualifications, and she wasn't given a job simply due to box ticking. The NHS chose the other person who had less experience, less qualifications, who hadn't given as many years of dedication as the other nurse did. They gave her that job simply to tick a box and say, oh, look, we do have ethnic minorities here because she's part of the BAME community. All these lefty, wishy-washy, snowflakey policies and principles that the establishment are pushing on every sector in the United Kingdom or in any other country is now releasing and exposing its racism to white people. Yet you call it out, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Madness.
Will then come back into Britain, this kind of reverse colonization. That's literally a phrase that some on the left use. We have this obligation, and also we have an obligation as a Western rich country. We have to help poorer people. We have to open the gates and help the whole world become like us.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? Diversity is a strength until such a time it comes to be a punishment. So there is an ethnic post-colonial grudge that emanates from that part of the world, despite us giving them technologies and advancements and banning practices like sati, burning widows.
It makes me laugh because we send more money, right, at the moment. I took part the other day in a farmers' protest. They get no help. In fact, they've had more policies that have caused damage to them and us in general because we won't be able to have as much food or cheap food because of them, and we won't be able to be self-sufficient, relying on other countries to import our food, which genuinely means they have more control over us. Yeah, yeah. Overseas. So, hang on a sec. What's going on here? Bear with me. Is that still playing?
Alive for no particular reason other than just pure superstition, preventing members of the lower caste throwing themselves beneath the wheels of the
Did that play? Nico, can someone in the chat tell me, did that play?
juggernaut statue
Anyway.
whenever it's wheeled out once a year, and sacrificing their own children because they think it would get them better karma. I mean, we stopped all these abhorrent practices. We spent more in 60 years to abolish the slave trade around the world than we ever did actually profiting from it in Nigel Bigger's excellent work on colonialism. I don't think that we have a moral obligation to take in the world and its wife, especially when they don't seem particularly grateful to us. Thank you very much. And I don't think there are moral obligations that lie outside the relationships we form. You can't be moral on a desert island. You can only be moral in a relationship with someone else. And if we don't have positive relationships with these countries, with these people, if our generosity is not only not extended to us, but is used as a symbol of weakness, a reason to exploit us, and no matter how generous we are to immigrants and the children of immigrants, we are called racist for not having enough of them in, I don't think we should extend that generosity to the rest of the world. I think, much like Yoram Hazony, the host of this wonderful conference that we're at, I think that nations actually prosper not when they engage in imperial projects on one another. I think they prosper most when each people is given, to the best of their ability, the ability to practice national self-determination, to allow themselves to be a homogenous majority, to practice the culture and faith they like in isolation, unmolested by the imperial designs of another country. And I think Britain has quite enough immigration, quite enough colonies in its country, and I think that colonialism should be reversed.
Yeah, so as I was saying, sorry, there was a glitch on the screen. I was a bit worried that everything had disappeared. So as I was saying, I was at a farmers' protest the other day, and we, like I said, the policies put on these farmers, and they're destroying everything. And we're relying on other countries to basically control us even more. And we are spending more money and giving foreign aid to countries to help with their farming, yet we won't help our own. It is madness. We're helping other countries become net zero, or yet they're producing more carbon than we are. So why is it that all of a sudden the UK, being as small as it is, as an island, that is having to help out every single person, yet we can't help our own? Sorry, charity starts at home. You wouldn't just give, or a man and his wife would not just give their whole wages, month's wages or salary, and chuck it out the window to everyone else before feeding their own children. So why on earth should we do it as a nation? We should look at the nation as a house. The people within that house are the first people you look after. We should look after those. You wouldn't let strangers in around your children for safety reasons. And until we go back to this house analogy, which is how we used to look after our nation, the way you look at it, we were one big family, one big community. We looked after our own, and when there was spare, we helped others. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should help others. Charity should be something that you should be able to choose, not have it forced upon you or taken out of your tax and just with no decision whatsoever. The same as nobody chose for multiculturalism. Yeah, it's here, it's forced upon us. You should be able to ask the people. The power, the politicians, they get the power from the people. And until we, the people, realize that it is us that hold the keys to the country, it is us that have the power over ourselves, then we're going to continue to go down this path of self destruction.
Connor Tomlinson, thank you very much.
Pleasure, sir.
This is your country.
You're allowed to film in this country. Wind your neck in.
Well, you can see there, he's got it out. What the fuck? One in the grey hoodie. You can't behave like that here, buddy.
I'm not going to play any of DJE's videos for obvious reasons. So then, by the way, if anyone would like to join, you're more than welcome at the end, and I'll invite you on for a Q&A or to come on and have your opinion or to ask any questions you may have. You're more than welcome. I do want to go and watch another video. In fact, I have a playlist which has so many videos. We're talking, I think, around 150 videos relating to this topic, the Islamification of the West, and how to deal with it. And I've said simply how there is a solution. We shouldn't tiptoe around this or try and brush it under the rug and just leave it there. But like I said, if you would like to come on, the stream is, I've put it in the comments, the link to come on, and it's also in the banner that is ticking along on the bottom as well. So you're more than welcome to come on. Nico, you're more than welcome to come on. I've made you a moderator, by the way. I'll talk with you about that as well in the nearer future about house rules, so on and so forth. If anyone's wondering why I'm wearing these, it's because there is a big bright light, which obviously helps. These are prescriptive glasses as well. I'm not trying to be cool. I'm not trying to hide my identity, neither. You probably see me in a lot of videos wearing these, and it's simply because of the light. I get migraines also, and it helps me be able to see the screen. So I prefer wearing these than these because it dampens the light and I can see everything. So there you go. I'm not trying to be gangster or anything like that. Anyway, so that was Connor Tomlinson. I believe he is an amazing speaker, a great orator. He is going to do well. I do hope he takes down the path of politics in the next decade or two, because if he did, he would really do some good. And just the way he is, he's in his 20s. Can you believe that? That man is in his 20s. And he is so mature, such a great speaker, and he's clued up. He knows what's going on. Sadly, I don't believe he's radical enough with his solutions. But then again, he has got an audience, and he has to be careful. Keep your cards close to your chest. Some people are suggesting Nigel Farage is doing that. Is he? I don't think so. However, many do. We will see. Time will tell. Connor, though, absolutely great orator and spoke about it how it was. Everything that he said, pretty much, I commented just before. And no, I've not seen that video. I've seen literally 20 seconds of it and thought, this is great. I'll put it on the playlist. So when I eventually get the time and come around to do a live stream, I can then bring it up. There are plenty more as well, believe me. We have got to go through so much. And we have got the Rome Reacts that we have to do. Also, you've probably noticed I haven't taken down the Christmas decorations yet. This is the only room that is still currently decorated with Christmas decorations. I've already been told off. I have been busy. Like I said, 2026, this year, is all about activism for me. I have been so busy the past 2 weeks, taken to the ground, giving you the content, and the channel has successfully grown from, I believe it was 800 subs to 1,500 subs just in the past week or two. So it has grown magnificently. And the views that we're getting as well is absolutely great. I wish more people would come on board and just subscribe. It is free after all. We speak the truth here. We say it how it is. Yes, I am a patriot. I am a Christian. I am both. And we put content up around both areas. Some you may not like, some you may do. But you'll always know what I am talking about by the title. I will never do clickbait. I'll never put anything in there for you to misguide you. If something if you're a patriot and you're not a Christian, just a cultural one, then some of the Christian videos may benefit you. They may give you some of the answers to the questions you have. I have already been emailed, and if you would like to email me, the email is thepatrioticchristianuk@gmail.com. I have had people very interestingly email me recently to talk and ask me questions about Christianity, about God, and I'm going to bring them on soon to do a live stream as well to discuss about the proof for God and so on and so forth. So we're going to go from there. But if there's any videos that are related to God or patriotism or they're separate things, then I'll make that clear in the titles always, so you don't end up clicking on things that you don't want to watch. So the content's there. I like to cover everything. So if there's something that you would like me to cover or bring up and discuss, you're more than welcome to go on the community and put a post there or comment in the post or email me, and I will definitely cover it for you. We remain free. We always will, regardless, even if this had 1 billion subscribers. I will never add any type of payment or support method for you to try and support me. Why? Because this is a hobby. I love doing what I do, and I want to do this for my children and the future of Britain. Anyway, with that being said, we are going to move on to the next video. And like I said, if you want to come on at the end and put any questions to me or join me, then you're more than welcome to. The link is in the comments, and I'll put it again in there just in case, but it's also rolling along on the bottom of the screen as well. You don't have to show your face, and you can put in what name you want as well. So we're going to go on to the next video, which is called Why Are We Afraid of a 1400-Year Secret? Or Why We Are Afraid, a 100-year secret. Dr. Bill Warner, absolutely. Again, a great orator. And this is a good video, I believe, that you should see. And I will leave it to you to see as well, with no interruption, so that you can watch it through. I'm not going to interject or give my opinion on this, just let you watch it through continuously. I know some people, I know in the last one, I kept cutting it, but this one I'll leave to flow for you to see as it is. So we're going to go on that now. And there we go. Oh, I don't think I shared the screen, did I? No, bear with me. I made a mistake. Let me go back. I'm playing it. I'm watching it on my own. I'm ever so sorry, guys. You didn't miss anything. Let me go back on there. There we go. That's what I forgot to do last time. And luckily, I noticed it. I've got the phone right next to me so I can see. So here we go. We're back on. There we go.
Thought when I got my books written in which the Quran was easy to understand, here's Muhammad easy to understand, all these books on Sharia and everything were easy to understand, I thought, we win. No, we don't even have game. Because what I discovered was, other than a minority view, and trust me, you are so minor, everyone else's reaction to the knowledge, to the answer to question, what is the true nature of Islam, react in fear, hatred, and anger. When I try to explain to people something about Islam, they're terrified. So I thought people would run when I got my books published, and indeed they did run away from me. So I thought there was just one great question. What is the true nature of Islam? But I found there was a second question more important. Why are we afraid to know Islam? Now, remember I told you about stories? here's the thing. My books are factual. They work here. But in dealing with human beings, if you're going to make a sale, any salesman will tell you this, the facts are secondary to the feelings. And where you get feelings is from stories, amongst other places. And I began to think about, why is everyone so afraid even though they don't know anything? Well, it turns out they do know little figments of stories about Islam that involve violence. And the knowledge that they were into the slave trade does not come as a shock, really. So remember I told you that the house of Sufism was like a palace with a smell coming up from the basement? Everyone smelled that smell. They just don't want to talk about it. But it's somewhere deep in the back, almost primordial mind. So, the problem is we don't know the history of Islam. We don't know the answer to this question. This is the world of Islam. How did it happen? You can ask very intelligent people, and they will not be able to give you the answer to this question. How did North Africa go from being European and Christian to becoming Arab and Muslim? How did that happen? And is that an important question? How did the Middle East go from being Christian to Muslim? And is that an important question? I think it's an overwhelmingly important question. All right. Now, to understand how that Islamic world came about, we're going to have to go about and see how Islam entered our world. Now, to do that, Islam entered the world of the Byzantine Empire. We know that in the Sirah, Muhammad's life, his last days were spent killing Christians and subjugating them. After he died, that process continued. So, let's describe the world that Islam invaded. Now, we're told that the Roman Empire collapsed when the German barbarians invaded Rome. Y'all heard that story? Well, that's false. That is not true. It is wrong. What happened was, after the German barbarian tribes invaded Rome, they set up their own version of the Roman Empire. They retained classical culture. They spoke Roman. They hired Roman philosophers and Roman attorneys to teach their children and to run their schools. They came into the Roman Empire not to destroy the empire, but just to get the goods for themselves. The eastern part of the empire, so-called Byzantine Empire, is over here. Now, this is after the German invasion. The important point is this: there was still a classical empire. It's not collapsed. Then, after the fall of Rome, the Byzantines gradually exerted their political influence till now this was the new form of the Roman Empire. This is the Byzantine Empire, and it is about to be invaded. This is the classical world that Islam invaded. Notice that the classical world is still up and running. It's critical to remember that. It was now weak, but it was still up and running. We're going to see what caused its collapse. Here we see in 25 years, 3 stages of development of the spread of Islam. This is 25 years' work. How is it that the Arabs were able to do to the Byzantine Empire what the Persians could not do in Iran? Here's the answer to that question. It has to do with Iran, actually. The Greeks and the Persians had been having wars since forever. All right? The 300 at Thermopylae, that was about the Persians. All right? Alexander the Great, he defeated the Persians. The Persians kept hammering on the Romans and then the Byzantines, and 25 years before Islam invaded, there was one massive last series of battles that left Persia weak and the Byzantine Empire very weak. Then comes along the Black Plague. 1 person in 3 dies. So the Byzantine Empire, when Islam invaded, had been weakened by a long war with Persia and the loss of 1/3 of its population. The economy had collapsed by 2/3. You think the Obama economy is bad? Try 2/3. So we had an empire that was weak, invaded by people with a mission. Now, what's important here is these three different shades of green represent the different caliphs. This empire is beginning to build here came from people who could be described as the apostles of Muhammad. Why is it important to know that? They knew Muhammad. They held his hand. One of them, Ali, married his daughter. Abu Bakr was his father-in-law. These people are not just brothers in the religious sense, they're brothers in the family sense. They knew Muhammad like I know my wife. And what did they do? Did they go out preaching the Quran? No, they didn't. They picked up their swords, got on their camels and horses, and went out whacking Christians and Persians. That is, this is the true nature of Islam. Here you see it. This is the fruit on the tree. Massive destruction. Now notice something else that's happened here. Egypt is the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. Syria, the heart of the intellectual world of the classical empire. In 25 years, the classical civilization lost its ability to feed itself and lost its biggest brain trust. This destroys classical Christianity. Christianity that we have today is a bloody stump of the original Christianity. Why? This destroyed the heart of it, transformed it. The first stage of the annihilation of classical empire, gone. The heart of it's gone. Okay. A century later, notice over here in Spain, 750 AD, Spain is already Muslim. This is rapid fire conquest. This is going to become very important because this happened as it were in the life of a nation overnight. This brutal assault is the key as to why we fear Islam. Now then, you're next going to see history that you've not heard before. I'm not a historian, but I am a scientist. And I can reason from data. I knew once I read the story of Muhammad that I had been fed a pack of lies about what caused the Dark Ages. Roman barbarians didn't cause the Dark Ages. First off, why would these barbarians were Germans? These are the same people who made Germany. You're telling me they were too stupid to learn how to do Roman law and stuff? Of course not. They were very intelligent people. They didn't cause the collapse. But that's the classical theory. If you go to Vanderbilt, that's what they'll teach you. Here we go with the data. There has recently been a lot of classical ancient works that have been translated and put into a database format so they can be accessed. There's been massive archaeological research under the ocean and at the edge of the Mediterranean. From this archaeological research, we're able to track history and economies. All right? That figure I gave you about how the economy collapsed, that came from the study of sunken vessels. Because if you're not buying much, if 1 in 10, let's say 1 in 10 ships is sunk, that figure's not that high, but whatever. If you see a lot of sunken ships, there was a lot of ships sailing around. When they go down, the economy goes down. So from this data, we know a lot. And this, in particular, the database of ancient documents gives us 548 battles that Islam fought against the classical world. This is all new information. I've talked with people who consider themselves history buffs, and they go, well, let's see, battles of Islam against Europe. Let's see, we've got the invasion, we got Tours, we got the invasion of at Gibraltar, we've got Lepanto, Gates of Vienna, collapse of, okay, that's 5. You talk to a historian, and those are the 5 battles they can scratch up. And I remind you, you can have all of these slides if you just send me an email for it. Okay, what does this new data show us? It shows us this. See the white spots? They're brand new battles. They're going to change to red. These are new. Every time, I want to show you this all over again. Every tick is 20 years. The new battles for that 20-year period come up in white, then they fade to red to show you the history. So white's what's happening right now, red has happened. Let's see how these 548 battles act out over. We're going to watch in 70 seconds, we're going to watch 1,200 years of conquest. Look how fast this is happening. Bam! Here comes, you didn't know France was hammered that hard, did you? You heard of Tours. Watch what's happening in Spain and the islands. Now, many of these raids or battles, if they're at the coastline, are slave raids. The slaving that took place in here was extensive and went on and on. All of this work is also happening now then. We're now into the golden age of Baghdad. This is the punishment that's being handed out to Christians everywhere. In Spain, after one battle, there were knights' heads were cut off and they made a pile so high that a man on horseback couldn't see over them. All of the European civilization in North Africa is now gone.
I have a question. Have you read the 13th tribe?
No.
Okay.
Now, pretty soon, and by the way, there will be a period of time, and you can see the clock running up here, there will be a brief blip of 5 battles that occur in North Africa, the Barbary Pirate Wars. We're on there. Okay? Now then, Byzantium has fallen. Now then, Eastern Europe is being hammered. Notice that it is relentless. It doesn't stop. This is the history that you're never told about. This is the history that explains how all of this came about. Now then, they're getting slower because Islam is becoming weaker. Corruption. All empires collapse from the inside ultimately. Okay. I say that what caused the collapse of classical civilization was not the invading German barbarian tribes. I say that classical civilization was destroyed by Islam. Now comes the question, why do we not want to know that? We're going to answer that question. All right, now I want to give you the headlines. With all those little dots, basically what I've showed you is just quantity, okay? Relentless, but quantity. Now I'm going to give, we gave you 1,200 years of battles in like 70 seconds. Now we're going to go through in about 4 minutes. I'm going to give you the headlines from each century so you will know the emotional tone of what is happening. All right, 7th century. Muhammad sent Khalid out, the sword of Allah, to the Jazima tribe to offer Islam. They refused. He annihilated every one of them. At the Battle of Oasis in Iraq, for 2 days he spent out rounding up the losers, put them in a dry stream bed and cut off heads until the stream ran with blood. He then took the captain of the Zoroastrian Persian tribe. His wife was there. He cut off the man's head, let the blood drain into the soil, and raped his wife in the bloody soil. That was one of the companions of Muhammad. This is the nature of jihad. Where did Khalid learn how to do that? From Muhammad. From Muhammad at the Battle of Khaybar. Umar conquered Jerusalem, and every Jew and every Christian became a dhimmi, which is a third-class semi-slave. You're now going to see, for the next few centuries, you're going to see Golden Age. We're told this myth of the Golden Age, how wonderful Islam is. So here's what's happening during the Golden Age. They started attacking Sind, which is the Hindus. 26,000 Hindus died. Armenian nobles were herded into a church after a debate, and the building burned down on top of them. At Ephesus, 7,000 Greeks are enslaved. We're still having the Golden Age. All new churches were ordered destroyed. At Amorium, there was massive enslavement of all the Christians. The Egyptian Christians revolt over the jizya, which is the demi-tax under the Sharia. Churches are burned, vineyards destroyed. 10th century, we're still in the Golden Age. In Thessalonica, 22,000 Christians enslaved. Christians massacred in Seville. In Egypt and Syria, 30,000 churches destroyed. You have your religion, I have mine. Still in the Golden Age, 6,000 Jews in Morocco killed. Hundreds of Jews in Cordoba killed. 4,000 Jews in Granada killed. Georgia and Armenia invaded. In Hindustan, 15,000 killed, 500,000 enslaved. Golden Age, still upon us. In Yemen, the Jews are given the choice of convert or die. The Christians of Granada are deported to Morocco. And in India, cities are destroyed under the order convert or die. In one town, 20,000 Hindus became slaves. Still the Golden Age. 50,000 Hindu slaves decided to get freedom by converting to Islam. A new 20-year campaign created 400,000 new Muslims out of Hindus. Buddhist monks butchered, nuns raped. In Damascus and Safed, mass murder of Christians. Jews in Marrakesh massacred. Tabriz, forced conversion of Jews. Still, we're in the Golden Age. There are riots in Cairo. Churches are burned. Jews of Tabriz are forced to convert. Tamerlane, one of the most evil men who ever lived, massacred 90,000 Hindus in one day. 30,000 in another battle, massacred in cold blood. Another Muslim leader takes 180,000 Hindu slaves. Oops, we're out of the Golden Age. See if you notice any change in tenor. Tamerlane destroys 700 villages in India. Now then comes he then turned to Iraq and annihilated the Nestorian and Jacobite Christians. The Nestorian Christians, half of the Silk Route in China was Nestorian Christian. The Nestorian Christians had emissaries and missionaries in the court of China. Afghanistan was partly Christian. All right? Gone. This is part of the destruction of the church that no one knows about. 700 years of attack, they finally destroy Constantinople. 16th century, the son of Tamerlane destroys temples, forced conversions. Two of his generals built 2 towers of human heads. Once again, you couldn't see over them. And then noble women, Hindu women, started the practice of sati, which was mass suicide in order not to be sex slaves inside of the Sultan's harem. 17th century, Jews of Yemen and Persia forced to convert, forced conversions of Greeks. The Zoroastrians are persecuted in Persia, and over 500,000 killed Hindus. 18th century, more Zoroastrian persecution, Jews of Jeddah expelled, Jews of Morocco massacred, Hindu persecution continues. 19th century, more forced conversion of Jews, Jews of Baghdad massacred. Oops, 250,000 Armenian Christians slaughtered in Turkey. Now then, in Persia, the Zoroastrians are completely annihilated. 20th century, over 1 million Armenian Christians killed. 1 million. So you now not only know the number of battles, you now see the tenor of what's going on. You now know quality and quantity. Do you get the drift on how bad this was? Now then, the establishment doctrine is that we've already told you classical collapse had nothing to do with Islam. And indeed, Islam was a source of good because the hillbilly Europeans lost their classical learning and the shrewd, smart Arab Muslims preserved all the knowledge in the Golden Age. This is what is taught in our schools. I maintain that it was annihilated by Islam. Okay. We've been talking about land here. I now want to talk about water because classical civilization was based upon the Mediterranean Sea. Egypt was part of the Mediterranean world. It was not part of the African world, okay? Because to go from Alexandria, Egypt to Nigeria was a lifetime. But you could get on a ship and be there in 10 days. Does this make sense? It was cheap transportation. You could haul a ton of grain from Egypt to Rome as much as it cost 75 miles by ox cart. This is important. I'm going to be driving back on the interstate after I finish talking here. I do not expect to be attacked or shot at on the way. I presume that the interstate is safe travel. Used to be that way under the Roman peace. That ended. The importance of naval work, as many as 500 boats could be in the harbor of Constantinople. The collapse of the freedom of sea. Let me show you something. Now, we know this from history, the data. Rome used to communicate with France by boat. After Islam, they went overland through the Alps. Why did they do that? There was no longer freedom of the sea. Here's interesting. The Black Plague was a known problem in the Mediterranean. It used to take 4 months to get from here to Constantinople because there was sea trade back and forth. Well, that was eliminated. So now then, when there was an outbreak of the Black Plague, it went from harbor to harbor, all around here, and it took 4 years to get to here. Do you see the point I'm making? There was that little freedom of trade. As a merchant striking out to do business, you could wind up with your ship gone, your goods gone, and you're in chains, enslaved. By the way, this cuts down a lot on commerce. A brag. The Christians couldn't float a plank on the inland sea. What did this do? It isolated Europe and impoverished Europe. So, you know the business of the Barbary pirates? You know the business of the Somali pirates? Same. It is Sunnah. It is Sunnah, the way of Muhammad. There's a famous hadith which is repeated endlessly, in which Muhammad awakes in a dream and he sees his jihadists sailing the inland sea. Islam always practices, where possible, economic warfare. Muhammad attacked caravans. What was attacked in New York? Ooh, Trade Center. This, economic warfare. I am an admirer of Islamic civilizational war methods. They're superior to everyone else's thinking in war. They use everything for war. Everything, including the womb. This was an economic jihad. There were three, you've heard of the Dark Ages? Well, there were 3 Dark Ages. One in Europe, one in Turkey, one in North Africa. You weren't told that, were you? Wonder why. Here we see some ruins. What's the importance of these ruins? Well, they're up and standing. What happened to all the ruins in Rome? Well, the people who were still living there used them as quarries. They harvested them. The Colosseum remained simply because it was so big. What does this tell us here? If all this stone is still stacked up, there were no people. The invasion of North Africa was so brutal and so fast that it actually left in the harbor a layer of silt. Here's how that happened. North Africa used to be farmland, irrigated farmland. The Romans, clever men that they were, put along the roads in North Africa olive trees for shade and for keeping the road fixed for free. Because what would happen is you would bid on buying a lease on a stretch of Roman road in North Africa. You maintain the olive trees and the road, and you got to keep the olives. So the Romans got money from selling the lease, and then they got the road fixed for free, and somebody has a business making money. Is this clever or what? That all ended because the invading Arabs were not farmers. They were herdsmen. The people there were Christian. And so therefore, when the average Arab family would own 50 goats. They put their goats out into the fields of Christians, and the Christians as dhimmis had no right to protest. Between death and the erosion of the crops, there was this produced a layer of silt in the harbors. So that's how brutal, hard, and fast came about this collapse of economy in North Africa. What was left for a European economy? Furs, lumber, swords, and slaves. We're now really getting to one of the points where we don't want to know this history. Anybody here all real proud about how some of your ancestors were taken off a coast in Italy and then put into a harem in North Africa? And now you have children from that who are distant relations. You see, you may have distant relations in the Arab world you don't know about because 1 million Christians were sold into slavery. And by the way, the Venetians helped to do that. And another embarrassing piece of news is this. The Jews were very big in the trans-Mediterranean slave trade. Nobody comes out of this looking good. No one looks good. Are you also beginning to see, like, I don't think I want to know any more about this history at all? Okay? Are you catching on here? All right. Now, the other thing we're told that's so bad about Christianity and so pitiful about those poor Muslims are the Crusades. Who's ever heard this? Well, the Crusades, oh, that's so embarrassing. Gosh, you know, we got out of Europe. We went over there and invaded the Arab lands, and then we killed them and hurt them. And like, oh, I've heard preachers wallow in pity about how drastically bad the Crusades were. All right. First off, Islam, remember, destroyed 30,000 churches. The Jews and Christians were dhimmis. There was infinite number of brutality against Christians. Christians were fleeing the Middle East, and the Byzantine emperor appealed to the Pope, help us, please. Now, this was a big thing to do because the Byzantine emperor and the Pope did not get along at all. But these were desperate people. And what did the Pope look out and see? This is the world that he saw in 1100, the time of the First Crusade. Well, let's see. This much of Spain is Muslim, and we're getting our behind kicked on a regular basis. Oh, well, this Christianity's gone. Oops, this Christianity's gone. And look at all the battles in the non-Christian, in the areas that are still Christian. Do you see the geopolitical problem that the Pope was facing here? This was not just some, you know, we'll saddle up, get on our horses, and go steal from them Arabs, which is what you're told. This is the political picture. But now then, let's do this. Let's look at a battle map for the Crusades. Let's be fair. I showed you the jihad map. Now here comes the Crusade battle map. We're almost done. That's it. Now we're told that the Crusades are the moral equivalent of jihad. And therefore we need to be ashamed and whine and cry. All right. The Crusades were defensive, lasted 300 years, and the last one was over 800 years ago. All the jihad was offensive, lasted 1,400 years, and it's happening right now. In all probability, some Christian is being slaughtered in Nigeria today. Now, is this moral equivalence? Why won't they teach this in a church school? So the ministers will stop, oh, the Crusades were just so terrible. No, the Crusades were one of the few times the church put steel in its spine. And then we apologize for it. Now then, let's go to the great benefits of Islam. We're told about two different golden ages. We're told about Andalus, the wonderful empire in Spain, in which there was multicultural peace, and Jew and Christian and Muslim all lived together in a golden age in Europe. You ever heard that? Well, here we go. This is the battle map of the golden age in Andalus. Now, while all this is going on, orders for slaves are being filled. The first slave order out of Spain was the caliph ordered up 3,000 blonde virgins. They were shipped out of Spain. Battles are going on in which Christian knights die. But notice something here. The Christians won't quit fighting. This is going to take 700 years, and there's going to be nearly 150 battles fought.
Where was this caliph located?
There was more than one caliph at the time. This was a caliph in North Africa. Okay. Now then, looking at this, do you understand why when Isabel and Ferdinand were finally in full power, they told every Muslim in Spain to get out of here? They drove everyone out. Okay, my question for you is this. Was Andalus a multicultural golden age or a reign of terror? I claim it was a reign of terror, and it was not a golden age at all. And yes, there were a few people who had it good. The elites had it good. There were some rich Jews and rich Christians that had it good. Also, otherwise, there was constant war, slavery, and Christians had to wear robes so you could tell a Christian from a block away. And a Christian couldn't carry a sword, and they paid special taxes. And then we come to the question, why are we told this story? Now we have the Baghdad Golden Age. Here we go. This is all the battles that are fought during the period of the Golden Age in Baghdad. Now, not only are they as busy as they can be killing Christians, but they're also busy establishing the Sharia doctrine. They're also busy establishing the Hadith doctrine. And they're also busy in doing things like slave trading. You know, all those exotic photo pictures you've seen of the harem. They're sort of pre-Playboy sexy, beautiful women in gauzy outfits. All of those women were Christians. Less romantic sounding, isn't it? The other thing that's happening in Baghdad is this. A new philosophy is being generated in which there is no cause and no effect. This turns out to paralyze the mind. Okay, those were all the battles that were fought during the mythical Golden Age. Okay, during the Golden Age, Christians and Jews were dhimmis, Christians were sex slaves. Here's one that gets me. During this Baghdad Golden Age, they evolved a philosophy in which there were no laws of nature and there was no cause and effect. I'm a scientist. We work off of two laws, the law of contradiction, does the data contradict the data, and the law of cause and effect. I've just explained to you why out of their Golden Age, why you don't find Muslims getting Nobel Prizes in science. You cannot be a scientist and not believe in cause and effect. You just can't. Won't work. Now then, the Christians did all of the vaunted translation of the Golden Age text, and get this, we're told that this was such a great peak of learning, they destroyed 90% of the books. And we're told that the remaining 10% they preserved is like, oh, this was the Golden Age. Oh, we live in eternal gratitude to the Muslims. If they had come along, we'd have had 100% of them. Presented with a library in India, the largest library in the world was a Buddhist library in Nalanda. They came to him and reported the existence after they had conquered, and they said, what shall we do with the library? The order from the general was this. If it contains any information that is in the Quran, we already have it, burn it. And if it contains any information that is not in the Quran, it is false, burn it. The same was done with most all of the libraries. And why are we told this was some wonderful golden age that preserved knowledge for us? Ottoman Empire, 1683. The reason I have this up here, Islam in Europe. That's the world today. I've now explained to you how this world came about. It came about through relentless, brutal persecution of everyone who was not a Muslim. Now then, let's change to modern times. All of that work stops in 1922. This works off a database of 19,000 jihad attacks since 9/11. There are things like this. I know the date, the country, the city, how many killed, how many injured, and a description. Now, when you present a guy like me with 19,000 pieces of data, I start asking questions, how do we make this make sense? So let's make it make sense. By the way, you did hear all about these 19,000 attacks in the Tennessean and the local newspaper, didn't you? You did hear about this. It was on the nightly news. Oh, the workplace incident. Oh, yeah, I got that. All right. Anyway, moving along here. This, by the way, is where all these took place. I think that's interesting. And you'll notice something. This is the Islamic world, and it all centers around it. But notice how much is happening in Europe. Okay. I take the data and I parse it and I divide it. I use Islamic doctrine to analyze this data. What does Islam insist on? Well, in my first lecture, I told you they're fixated on the kafir, right? So I use the kafir to analyze this data from an Islamic standpoint. See, I'm the ultimate multiculturalist. No, really. I'm the only person you've ever met who analyzes Islam on the basis of Islam. Here we go. Here we have, in the last 10 years, the total number of attacks. In the green, we have Muslim on Muslim violence. You mean a Muslim will kill a Muslim? Really? They're doing it in Syria as we speak, right? Remember Iran, Iraq? Okay. Then we have the only one I care about. I mean, my motto here is sell weapons and intelligence to the loser. I'm very serious. You think I'm joking. I know. Okay, here's our story right here. Stays pretty level. That's interesting. By the way, there's hardly a day in which there's not a jihad attack. Modern jihad is relentless, just like classical. Oh, by the way, one of the things this curve proves right here, Islam is bad for Kafirs. Islam is bad for Muslims. Islam is bad for Muslim and non-Muslim. That's what this data shows us. You want to argue with that? Okay, modern jihad is relentless. But what did we see in the other battle map? It was relentless. There are two types of jihad, against the kafir and against Muslim. You see, every time they kill a Muslim, the reason in Syria they're killing other Muslims, they're not real Muslims. Okay? Now then, we've introduced, however, a new phenomena, the mom and pop non-state jihadi shop. Okay? All of those battles up to 1922 were out of the caliph. Okay? We now have non-state jihad. That is all that is different. Okay, jihad attacks per year. I just chose the top 4 nations. But this doesn't really give us what we want because Israel's teeny weeny and India's great big. So let's do this on per capita. Now then, Israel, I bet you were surprised about Thailand. You didn't know that Thailand was getting whacked on a regular basis, did you? And look, here's a Christian nation, the Philippines, ranks number 3. And then India was Hindu. Oops, wait a minute. Do you know what I just told you? Jihad is against the Jew, the Buddhist, the Christian, and the Hindu. This is the data. Now you go to these dialogues, these multicultural smoozes they have, where the preacher and the rabbi and the imam show up. The preacher and the rabbi show up to tie. The Muslim shows up to win. And then what does the Muslim tell them? Oh, the Christians and the Jews, they're people of the book. Oh, we're brothers in the religion of Abraham with the Christian and the Jew. You know, we're practically the same. We're brothers in Abraham. How's that stuff work out? Well, here's one of your people of the book. Here's another people of the book. Turns out they'll kill a Jew, a Buddhist, a Christian, or a Hindu just as fast as they will another. So much for being brothers in the religion of Abraham. The data does not support the theory. Therefore, the theory is wrong. There is no brotherhood of Abraham except in the minds of people who occupy pulpits. The jihad is against the Jew, the Buddhist, the Christian, the Hindu, and the secularists, by the way. The secularists are the worst of all. Well, maybe worse than the Hindu. It gets hard to know, you know, I mean, really. It's against all kafirs. That's who the jihad is against. The religion of peace. Here we go. 548 battles, 19,000 jihad attacks. In 12 decades and 1,400 years that are jihad-free. Therefore, Islam is 91% violence and 9% peace. So George Bush was 9% right when he declared religion of peace. Constant violence is why? There's a doctrine. The doctrine of jihad is found in the Sirah, the Quran, and the Hadith. We've already been over this. They don't like kafirs. We have a whole doctrine of jihad within the text. Islam was only successful through jihad. Therefore, we have a doctrine which produces jihad, and it produces this effect of the collapse of civilizations. Here you go. Tears of jihad. 270 million dead over 1,400 years. Read them and weep. Read them and weep. The doctrine drives history. History shows the true nature of political Islam. Political Islam is the enemy of all Kafir nations. There's an intellectual history. In 1400 years, I've read a lot of old documents. They never talk about the Muslim. They talk about the Arab, the Turk, the Moor, Al-Qaeda, Asian, and it's always been by specialists. And today, all the established specialists are apologists for Islam. Why was the Quran code not cracked recently? How come we don't teach Muhammad? And why is the Golden Age propaganda taught? Why do we remain ignorant and keep suffering? I maintain there's a reason for this. I maintain that this constant brutality over the centuries has produced in the Western mind the equivalent of the abused dog, the beaten wife, and the raped child. We do not think correctly. Everybody's seen the beaten dog that when you approach it, that is the Western mind. We deny the attacks. How much jihad is ever reported? The churches will not even admit that a Christian suffers anywhere. Fear. Muhammad used fear. Any public critic of Islam has a certain fear element there. Guilt. Oh, we haven't treated Islam right. If we treated them better, everything would be good. We don't teach the history. We humiliated. Who here is going to go home and brag about how your ancestors were slaves, how your history was annihilated, and that all we teach is the lie of the Golden Age? Have you not noticed since 9/11 how bitter and angry politics has gotten? The reason is we're not allowed to get angry at the enemy, so we get cranky with each other. We're powerless. Anybody want to debate about this? The abuser. Muslims will not admit they sold a single slave or ever killed a person. They're arrogant and self-confident. Islam is perfect. Word Islam means submit. They expect submission out of us, and they get it. Islam is the victim. After 9/11, I heard this. The real victims of 9/11 were the Muslims. You heard that anywhere? After 1,400 years of jihad, brutality, enslavement, theft, deception, rape, annihilation, and insults, the Kafir mind has become identical to that of an abused victim. Our only solution is to face our history and welcome it and embrace it. This is exactly the way we will heal our nation, is the way we heal a person who's been brutalized. You have to go back to the original event. And this is why we are afraid. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Now you have learned. Now you have seen some of the history. Now you have seen exactly why Islam is not a religion of peace. How narcissistic that modern Islam is. How it pretends to be the victim. This so-called golden age of Islam, which is preached and taught in our schools, colleges, universities. Bill Warner is a genius. An absolute genius. And although you may look at this and think, no interest to me, it's not going to affect me. Really? Do you really believe that? Because there's already a plan. They're not obviously doing conquering the West now like they used to, on horseback with swords. Instead, they have a new strategy. They have a new plan. Because the West, since all this happened in history, has become powerful. We are now dominant. The West has nuclear weapons. We could easily wipe out. The only reason the Middle East exists is because we let it so. As Brian Williams once said, it is only because of the East and the West that the Middle East gets to live. Because if it was up to either side, we would simply be able to wipe them out. But we won't. Why? Because we're tolerant. But we're also using this mentality, which he goes on about, this abused mentality. We're too humiliated to admit what happened in the past. We don't want to talk about it in case it upsets anyone. This fear I don't certainly have it. Doesn't. This is why I'm showing it. It's important. This history should be known, taught, and preached to every single Western person, male, female, child, adult, black and white. Instead, they want to make you feel like the suspect. They want to make you feel bad about your history. They'll tell you about slavery and how bad it was, but they won't tell you that it was us that ended it. They'll preach everything bad about the empire and colonialism, but won't teach about the good that went with it. But let me show you why Islam is, if not more dangerous in today's age than it was back then. At least back then, it was in your face. You knew what was coming. You would be able to hear rumors and stories from people who traveled, although they didn't have the internet, which was obvious. We have that now, and we're able to share information with a snap of a finger. But back then, it wasn't as easy to do so. And they knew that. They used everything to their advantage. That's why Bill Warner himself said they used every strategy possible, including the economy, including the womb, to wage warfare amongst the Kafir. And the Kafir are the non-believers, us. They call us the Kafir, infidel. Let me show you why this is relevant to today and how important it is to understand how dangerous, if not more dangerous, Islam is today than it was in the past. Let me present you Bridget Gabriel, not Ayan Ursi Ali, or what her name is. I forgot. It's hard to pronounce her name, but it's actually Bridget Gabriel, the Lebanese woman I was referring to at the start. Let's hear what she has to say about what I was referring to as the Muslim Brotherhood Memorandum. And this is why, exactly why, we should be prescribing the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. In fact, only a month ago, I set up a petition which had over 2,000 signatures, which then got removed. The petition went missing for a month. The government must have literally shut a brick that someone was actually going against the Muslim Brotherhood and was trying to get it prescribed through a petition as a terrorist organization. The USA have just prescribed them as a terrorist entity. They have councils here in the United Kingdom. They operate here with no problems. Do you know that the MI5 and the MI6 watch list is 96% to 97% focused and dominated over the power and struggle of Islam, jihad, planned attacks, that we have sleeper cells that we do not know nothing about? In fact, the estimated figure is around 10,000 sleeper cells in the United Kingdom, waiting for the nod at any moment's notice. And we're not talking about restaurants or tubes or buses anymore. No, they're going for the jugular, just like we've seen in Southport, where they hurt us the most, our children. Why do you think mass fatality contracts have been taken out by our government, paid for already? Why do you think there has been emergency testing on our phones recently? Why do you think they are practicing lockdown drills in schools, colleges, universities, campuses? Think it's all a conspiracy, that this is all happening all at once, whilst these migrants are coming in by their thousands on a daily basis, being moved into military camps? Do you not think there's something sinister with that? And not only do they come here and commit atrocious and heinous assaults and attacks on our women and children, but they are also instructed not to speak with us, not to integrate or assimilate with us. rather ignore us. Why? Because we're racist. They're told this. These migrants are told this to avoid us. I have a video in my shorts showing that. But let me show you this. This is very important. Watch this.
My hand, the Muslim Brotherhood plan for the destruction of the United States, written 5/22/1991. The title of the plan is مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية. You all got that? There will be a quiz. It is titled the Muslim Brotherhood, an explanatory memorandum for the general strategic goal for the group, the Muslim Brotherhood in North America, written 5/22/1991. This plan was presented as evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest terrorism trial ever in the history of the United States, where our government handed down, hello, my best friend, where our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts for Muslim Americans and Muslim American organizations raising money to support terrorist organizations in the Middle East to the tune of millions. And I'm just going to read you a paragraph of this plan, so it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. They talk about the settlement in the United States. And I have to put my glasses on because God in his wisdom decided I turned 49 and I needed reading glasses. Wait until I get to heaven. I'm convinced he's a man. If he was a woman, he would know I would look better without glasses. Understanding the role of the Muslim brother in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan, which is the Arabic word for brothers, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Is this clear? They don't mince words, do they? But the most important page of this document is the last page, because in the last page, they list 29 front Islamic organizations set up in the United States with the specific goal of sabotaging America from within and destroying America by our own hands. And I'm just going to name a few. Number one on the list is ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. And if you're familiar with ISNA, it's because they are now advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. So we not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the White House dictating policy in the ear of the president. Number two on the list is the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republicans combined. Number 8 on the list is NATE, the North American Islamic Trust. The North American Islamic Trust owns the deed to over 90% of American mosques in the United States. That is a problem. Now, what makes this very important, and I'm going to focus in the last 5 minutes on education, is to show you how they set up every organizations in this plan to destroy America, focusing on every sector of our society. Organizations focused on publishing, organization focused on media, organization focused on education, with the strict purpose of doing sabotage to America from within. And I'm not talking military. We know that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all the others want to attack the United States and do damage to the United States. As a matter of fact, we in the United States have 150 terrorist organizations right now operating in America. 5 of them are operating right here in the District of Columbia. And our government, and these are the ones we know about.
So there you have it. That's just some. That is just some of the memorandum. So she read one paragraph, which tells you about their plan. Now, I highly suggest and encourage every single person that watches this, or is watching this, or watches this in the future, to go and look it up. The Muslim Brotherhood Memorandum, the 100-year plan. And you will see how they want to take over, when, and what, and every single detail. And you will see year by year what their goals are. And they are currently at they are halfway through, and they have achieved absolutely everything they have needed to do so far. Absolutely everything. They are in the media. They are in government. Like she said, the fox is not just looking at the hen house. It's in the hen house now, disguised as a hen. Bill Warner has I've already shown you that jihad is not a struggle within. What Islam truly is. You have seen, and how we've been lied to by our establishment out of fear, cowardice. As I was saying to you earlier, before I bring my brother Nico on, there is a website which is called religionofpeace.com, and I just want to show you this very quickly, because Bill Warner, believe it or not, got the number wrong on the terrorist attacks, and I think it's an old video. But let's just have a quick look at this. So here, this the religionofpeace.com, and again, I highly encourage all of you to remember this and tell your friends to have a look. Share the link. Go on there and share it with your friends so they know the truth. This website tells you absolutely everything about the Quran, the verses of violence, hate propaganda, in introduction about Muhammad, the life of Muhammad, myths of Muhammad, Muhammad compared to Jesus, 50 reasons why Muhammad was not a prophet, Islam, the human rights, the women's rights in Islam, moral issues, Sharia law, myths of Islam, that being a religion of peace, terror attacks, the last 30 days, 2001 to 2009, 2010 to 2017, 2018 to 2024, all in the name of Allah. But if you scroll down, there is a jihad report which is updated daily. And we're going to go on to this one here. So, from January the 17th to January the 23rd, past week, in the name of Allah, this is all we know of. This is just what we know of. That is recorded fact. There are, of course, a lot of people that have been killed, a lot more than this, that which will come out eventually. But there have been 25 attacks, 107 killed, 116 injured, 3 suicide blasts in 9 different countries. It will tell you as well on this website the atrocity of the week. Suicide blast at wedding kills 7. And here is the number of attacks that have been carried out under the banner of Islam, under the name of Allah. 48,825 deadly terror attacks since 9/11. That's the ones we know of, the ones that are recorded. 48,000. This is modern age. Imagine this being Christianity. There would be an uproar calling for Christianity to be banned. Unreal. And this is why I say the solution, the only solution, is to prohibit the practice of Islam. But also on here, you have the news: Buddhist teen murdered, Syria government aligned jihadi takes scalp of female Kurd, Bangladesh politics heats up, teacher hacked to death, 75-year-old woman burnt alive. This is happening in the modern world. This is today. All the things that we don't talk about. We're comfortable. Of course we are. We wake up, we have our food, we have our drink, we're okay. We've got nice, cozy, warm beds here in the West. This means nothing to us, of course. This also tells you of all the people who speak up against Islam. Jihad Watch, JNS, Douglas Murray, The Diplomat, Jerusalem Post, Robert Spencer. Robert Spencer said, without Muslims, Europe would be centuries behind. Iran Wire. A taxi driver's account of Tehran's protests and massacre. I need to tell someone what I witnessed. National interest. The Muslim Brotherhood is the Sudanese regime. Pajamas Media, or Pajamas. Terrorists raise funds in Pakistan. The funding that goes on, which ultimately ends up in Qatar and funds proxies, is absolutely unreal. And it is Qatar, Doha, that funds most of the universities here in the West, including America. Why doesn't anyone speak about it? They don't want to. They're afraid. They live in fear. Raymond Ibrahim, a man recently who has made his fame on YouTube speaking out against Islam, an ex-Muslim. Most people who speak up against Islam, telling people how dangerous Islam truly is, are ex-Muslims. But Raymond Ibrahim is a man on a scale that you couldn't believe. The Islamic Golden Age had nothing to do with Islam. Memory, the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to watch them. There are so many videos, playbook, and why the West should act. Memory have been warning the West for years. Some of the videos you'll find on X have been done by Memory. They've exposed the propaganda being put out and distributed by Palestine, that again funded by Qatar, all to make people hate Israel. Because if Israel fails or falls, we are next. Europe is next, which is why it is important that we stand with the only democracy surrounded by Islamic jihad and Islamic states. This is why we must stand with a democracy there. And sadly, it will fall. It will fail again. Why? Because 20 to 25% of their population is Arab Muslim. Yes, at the moment, it's nice and calm. It's peaceful. But what you watch and wait until that demographic changes. We will see within the next 10 years, if not closer, a bigger attack on Israel like never before. I promise you. Make that a prediction of mine that you can hold me accountable for within the next 10 years. Whether I'm here or not, it will happen, believe me. So this video will age like a nice wine, I can assure you. And now to bring on stage a brother in faith, a brother in Christ, the one and the only Nicodemus. How are you, Nico? How are you, my brother?
Great. Good to see you. Good to see you. Arguably doing well and active and fighting the good fight.
Trying my best. How are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna say give or take the same. I'm not quite as active as you. I have to admit there's some envy there. I have to admit. Yeah. It's really cool to watch you out there in the thick of it, just like getting your hands dirty, so to speak. Really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, I said before Christmas, I said 2025 was the awakening. It was the year where people woke up to the fact that the establishment can't be trusted, that the globalists are basically taking over and controlling absolutely everything that we do, everything we see, and they are looking to impose and take over all our freedoms away from us. And in order to protect what we have, our identity, culture, traditions, everything we know in the Western world, that we all have to stand up. And 2026 is that year. It's the year of the activism. It's the year people get boots on the ground and start to speak up. And we definitely have to. That's why I thought let's kickstart the year, especially with the channel going forward. To go out there, get on the ground, and show people what's going on, and also encourage people to join in as well, because there's a lot of people still scared. They don't want to join in. They don't want to speak out in fear of being locked up, or in fear of losing their jobs, or having arguments with friends or family. But that fear, this time that we are living in at the moment, is not a time to be complacent, not a time to be silent or ignorant. We have to stand up, just like those in Iran are standing up. What do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely. Yeah, no, a lot of people have bought into the rhetoric, and I think it's pushed by mass media that, um, you know, resistance is futile. There's nothing that we can do, and therefore, well, we'll just sit on our laurels and hope for the best while doing nothing. And that kind of attitude, I think, in my lifetime, has led to where we are now.
Yep.
And we see examples of where that's proven to be false, like Hantun Tosh um, has repeatedly been arrested for being attacked by Muslims. They arrested her instead, um, and she won both times a civil suit. Again, a civil suit is not exactly changing laws or anything, but it's the beginning.
Mm,
So I'm saying that as an example for people that say, well, we're going to lose no matter what. That's false. Uh,
yeah, of course it is.
Victory can only be found within the battle.
Exactly, exactly. And this Bill Warner touched on as well the whole ideology of how weak some Christian leaders are, where they preach this weak doctrine of Christianity. They use verses like "turn the other cheek" and "pray for your enemies," and so on and so forth. Yet they won't talk about how Christians have stuck up for themselves in the past, how masculine we were, and that we know ourselves within the Eastern Orthodox Church, because me and you are both Eastern Orthodox, that our priests, if our churches were attacked, would be out there fighting. They wouldn't be stuck inside hiding behind a door like you would see, a Protestant preacher nowadays, or on the phone to the police. They'd be out there throwing rocks themselves. I've seen videos of our very own monks and priests looking after their own church and their community. you know, they just wouldn't have it. They wouldn't have it. There is a time when you have to stand firm and protect what is right. And you know, God God wouldn't punish you for doing so. And this weak Christianity is all false.
Well, yeah, let me jump in. Yeah, I've been torn about that. I've been back and forth about that myself. And I do get the sentiment. This is something that I personally struggle with as far as pushback. I've been active somewhat in my own community and experiences with these migrating Muslims, and even have a fought one myself for doing that. But and there's many instances where I wish I had done more. Things that plague me where I didn't get involved, but may be blessed. But as far as this idea of masculine Christianity and all that, I'm going to agree with you that definitely historically, again, Bill Warner talked about the Crusades, the 1.5 centuries of Crusades, versus the 1.5 millennia of Islamic invasion that's still ongoing. But I do want to point out, for all listening, traditionally, yes, the Christian church did pray over soldiers fighting things like Islam, But soldiers that went out to war to do these things came back after war and repented. They abstained from communion for 1 or 2 years or whatever the case may be, because taking a life, regardless, is still sin. I know some want to say that their murder is different from killing and all that, but I just want to point out that we need to be careful that we don't become the very thing that we're fighting.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There's a difference between doing something because there is no choice. Because if
Right.
you don't, then we who we are or protect, we have free will, and God makes that very clear in the Bible. He's not controlling us. He's not controlling what we do or how we think. He has no control over that. We have the will and the choice to do what we want, and to give charity, or to help who we wish, or to defend who we must. And with that being said, if we was to protect our faith, our people, because of just simply defending them, that is a different ball game to enjoying the death, or enjoying going out and torturing people or murdering them
Right.
for the sake of it. I mean, when we talk about jihad, we're not talking about just a simple shot to the head because it's for the will of God, and they're so sad about it, and it upsets them. They do themselves. They claim themselves. In fact, Muhammad Hijab has shouted this in the streets of Britain whilst it echoed off the walls built by my ancestors, that they love death more than they love life. That it is, and it's true. And we
Right.
see that by their actions. They would gladly blow up a nursery. They have done. And look at what happened, the Beslan massacre. They do things that would hurt you the most, because they don't want to just do things to further the cause of Islam, or grow Sharia or expand. They also do it with a act of hatred.
Yes.
They
Malice.
feel we deserve nothing but the most evil kind of hatred that you could ever commit to someone. And they are committed to do it as well. And I'm not saying that every single Muslim does that. Of course not. That would be insane to say that. However, I am talking about the ones that feel the need to, for the cause of Islam. And the cause of Islam, of spreading and conquering the world, is growing by the day. And like I said, once a caliphate rises and they genuinely start believing that the prophecies are coming true, which they do. Muhammad Hijab and many scholars are now saying we're in the times, the end times, and that the Mahdi is coming. And they believe also that Jesus, the Messiah, is coming back. Isn't it funny how they this is what makes me laugh. Muhammad is dead, but Jesus is alive. Yet he's not divine. It doesn't make sense to me. But
Yeah.
Jesus is coming back, Muhammad isn't. Jesus judges the world, Muhammad doesn't. The irony is unreal, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that Muhammad was a false prophet. But like I said, Islam itself is, even I feel sorry, because again, like I was saying earlier, I have friends who are Muslims, and I know deep down that if they could, and if their community, if you remove the apostasy and the frowning upon apostasy away from Islam, then they would leave Islam.
Mm.
100%. They just wouldn't be there. They're only there because if they did leave Islam, their family would never talk to them again. Their community would be after them, and they would have to live in a life of fear and loneliness. And that's why they just pretend that they are Muslim, and they'll live a Western life, which is what I call a moderate Muslim.
Mm. Yeah, and that demonstrates just how much victims Muslims are themselves. The
It does.
website talked about it. Bill Warner talked about it, how how Muslims are devastating each other, something that's completely overlooked.
Yeah, they do. Have you seen that picture with where it's the last Muslim on the world in the world, and he's got a sword and he's fighting himself?
Yes, pre-bought. Yeah, I use that one all the time. I love it. It's perfect. Yeah, you know, I hate to ask because I don't want to put you in a pickle. You don't have to answer it, but I'm wondering, like, what you let me just say a solution that I would propose, extreme as it sounds. I would propose that Islam, just like certain entities like what are the anarchists called? Antifa. Antifa in the United States was considered a domestic terrorist organization, therefore, in essence, outlawed.
Yep.
I would say that Islam, the same needs to happen with Islam. These ideologies that are clearly, definitively a threat to others need to be called what they are: terrorist cells, terrorist organizations.
Yeah. Well, that's the premise that I'm going off earlier when I said prohibition. That is what I mean. It is outlaw. Outlaw the practice of Islam, the ideology, just like you would with Nazism. You wouldn't allow it to persist.
Right.
In fact, if you look at Islam, it is responsible for more deaths. I would love to do the calculations, but wow, you wouldn't be able to even comprehend the number that is even recorded, let alone the ones that we do not know about in history. Um, but it's responsible for the most evil. It's responsible for the most deaths, the most assaults. Obviously, due to YouTube, you've got to be careful with what you say. Um, and we've seen exactly even today in today's world, scalp. As I was reading off the religionofpeace.com, a human scalp taken off of a woman, literally this week. Then you've got the Yazidi women that were buried waist high or burnt in cages alive. And we've seen videos on X. This is why Keir Starmer and his totalitarian government are looking to ban X on Twitter, because people are awakening how dangerous this ideology truly is. Even the idea of taqiyya is becoming a common known phrase now, which has been
Good to know.
spoken on many British podcasts. And
Excellent.
it has done so because of Christian apologetics. The
Yeah.
likes of me, the likes of you, the likes of David Wood, even though we may have small channels, because we've brought these verses or these terms to discussion, people are now aware of what it means and what it actually is, and they've seen it they've seen videos, they've made videos, and they're now teaching people about it, and they're beginning to ask questions. And like I was saying earlier, every video I see, in fact, sometimes I could even be watching the boxing, and people will put in the live chat or in the comments, in capitals, ban Islam. That's all you see, everywhere. I genuinely do believe there was a referendum tomorrow here in Britain, whether it should be prohibited to practice this or outlawed, in your words, to practice the ideology, it would win by a significant number.
Yes, including by, like you said, those marginal Muslims, the ones that want to escape Islam, but are fearful of having their blood called halal because they want to leave Islam.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. And I mean, some people were talking about, when I was saying earlier as well, some people think the solution is as easy as just banning halal food. And it's like, well, if you ban halal slaughter, you'd have to ban kosher. And so it would be a discriminative attack on the Jews for something they haven't done by doing that. And not only that, they'll just import halal food. They wouldn't just stop their calls. They know exactly what they're doing. I know. In fact, I have friends that are Muslim that have spoken about their families and the discussions that their religious families or family members have at the table about taking over and about how the West is falling and how we are
Wow.
dirty and that we are kafirs and that the women belong to them and what was it? One of my friends said that the universal credit, the welfare system, is already our jizya.
Yeah, just you're right.
That's what they said.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you think, well, it's a weird question to ask on the back of that, but do you think the tides are maybe turning in the UK or not?
Definitely, the Overton window has moved, especially more recently. In fact, I was supposed to join Lloyd de Jong this evening in the Thunderous one for a live stream, which is why I've decided to do one anyway. But they weren't for some reason able to make this evening. And I was going to talk about how the Overton window is moving to the right, even more so due to ethno nationalism. Now, we have civic nationalism currently, is what the left are calling the far right. They call us the far right.
Right.
And we believe those who civic nationalists are those who believe that anyone who agrees with the values or upholds the morals, values, and principles of the British that celebrate Britain and its history, its culture, traditions, that loves our flag, that calls themselves a patriot, that they are British, whether they are born here or whether they're a descendant of a foreigner or so on and so forth. Yet ethno nationalism has been brought to the table more recently by a man called Steve Laws, whose premise is that the English native indigenous people to England are being wiped out, and that if we don't act soon and start re-migrating or sending home people that have even got grandparents that are foreign, if we do not send them home and their children with them, everyone with them, then we are going to be a minority, and we're going to lose our country. So I think, and I completely do sympathize with that. I do, because I am an Englishman. I have Anglo blood. It goes back many generations. However, I also have friends who are mixed race, and I wouldn't see it, to be fair, the likes of, let's say, someone famous who's Frank Bruno. He is as British as they come, I believe. He is, he was a British boxer. He was successful, paid into the system. He loves this country. He was born here. Yes, he is of a different color, but he is British. I see him as British. Whereas that lad who I named Steve Laws, who is an ethno nationalist, would send him home simply because his mum and dad were not British, to a country that he's never been to or seen. And that's something I have a problem with, because I don't think our people would allow that ever to happen, because we are very tolerant. But not only that, I also see it in a good way, because I don't believe neither that we have the radical policies or parties politically that have got the solutions to deal with the problems we are facing. So this does help. So it's kind of like when you're when you're making a deal or you're bargaining with someone, you go for the most extreme, you go for the big ask. Say something's worth £50, but you pull it up for 100, and then that's what Steve Laws is doing right now. He's doing the 100 thing. It's like, I want £100 for this item, but instead of accepting £50, which is what where we are now, we'll say, okay, we'll meet you halfway at 75. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with that. So, what can I say? Typical American. I'm not too.
So his proposition is it's okay for people to say Japan is for the Japanese, China is for the Chinese, or Greece is for the Greeks. However, when you say England for the English, people get their
Mm.
ass out and they'll call you a racist.
Right.
That's what his point he's making, and he's trying to say that he would like a Britain, especially in England, and not that is 95% white and
Okay.
with and English with generational heritage, if that makes sense. So that
Yeah.
they have grandparents that are English, parents that are English, and when challenged on this, because he has like this 7-point remigration theory that he's put in place or policy, and when challenged on this, people say, "But what if my mum is half this or half Irish or half Polish?" And he'll say, "Well, that's okay because they've got similar views and values as us."
Right.
And but if he says, "Okay, so what if my granddad then was from Sudan and I've never been to Sudan and I look white, I look English, but I've just got a different name, different surname. Do I have to go?" And he's like, "Yes, 100%." And he says, "And it's not against you. It's to defend who we are. It is to basically keep who we are." He said, "It's not personal. It's just necessary."
Right.
That's his argument. It's
For this,
necessary.
for the sake of preservation.
Yeah, exactly.
You
So
know, sorry,
that
go ahead.
argument. So sorry, that argument is now that's what the UK currently is sitting on that argument,
Mhm.
which like I said, I think is a good thing. I don't follow it. I don't encourage it. Like I wouldn't believe in that or vote for that. However, I think it's a good thing because it makes our position as civic nationalists, people who want the bad guys to go and bad things to be banned, more palatable to the left.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. All right, so there's a lot to unpackage there. Yeah, I don't know if it surprises you or not, but I would completely agree with that, with one exception, and that's the United States. What a lot of people are calling the American project lately for some reason.
Mm.
You know, so that is literally the United States is a mixed bag. You know, you Native American Indians, and then you got everyone else.
Yeah.
So putting that America, quote unquote, America to the side, yeah, I would say I think that there's nothing wrong with wanting people to be who they are. Isn't that the rhetoric of the quote unquote the left? You know, be who you are.
Exactly. Well, they say Palestine for the Palestinians, and suddenly now Trump's interested in Greenland. They're all like Greenland for the Greenlanders. But if you say England for the English, oh no, we can't have that.
Yeah,
That's racist. So I can
yeah,
see that's why I'm sympathetic to like, the Steve Law's ideology, if you want to call it that.
yeah. I would support that 1,000% if that's a real number. To be honest with you, I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of what label is thrown in my way, I don't see that at all as to be bigoted or racist or anything like that. I think it's quite the opposite. In fact, for
Yeah.
years now, for a decade, I've been trying to use this illustration inspired by university, a graduate program that I was in with a bunch of female educators. So you can imagine what that environment might have been like, without getting into that. But yeah, so the example is basically using three different sets of marbles. I wish I had the image to share with your audience, but basically you can picture it. A picture like one picture with a group of marbles that has this three, or I should say, let's say seven different colors of marbles, all separated and arranged. And then the second picture would show rainbow colored marbles, nothing but rainbow colored marbles. And then the third picture would show brown marbles, which would be a color that you would get when you blend all the pigmentation together. It becomes brown.
Mm.
So the first representation with the distinct colors, groups of colors of marbles, that would of course represent true diversity. But
Yeah.
what happens is with this what we call left rhetoric, We work towards this rainbow where everyone is the same thing, and then yet we call it diversity.
Mm.
Even worse is Islam, where they want to murky the waters and make everyone Muslim, the brown marbles, you know. So um, I'm trying to demonstrate that I think the first picture is actually really the one that's diverse, really the one that's most humane, most respectful towards people, all people, and
Yeah.
nobody who has a mindset or something like that in their heart should have any issue with allowing people to truly be who they are, regardless. Now, regardless, short of ideologies like Islam, communism, whatever, that they're out to destroy people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, that's a good. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Definitely. Yeah, it would be helpful to have that analogy to be able to actually present. Um, but yeah, I'll have to have a look for that. So
There, yeah, go ahead.
so what is how is it where you are at the moment? Is everything all good?
I have stories. I have a lot of stories. Things, unfortunately, on a local level, things continue to digress. Politically, the tides are allegedly turning. I know the rhetoric is changing. Some of these things are changing, and we're talking about locally. I'm in Greece. For those who are not aware, I'm currently in Greece. I was raised in America, Greek American. I went to Greece to continue my education, and I've been here since. And I've been here since the mid 20 teens, and I've witnessed a lot. In fact, I got quite active in this historical mass migration of Muslims in 2015.
You seen the life jackets, didn't you? The mountain of life jackets. That was there. Oh, you muted yourself, Nico.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was saying that I went to Greek islands again, volunteering for this stuff, and literally, they would have a landfill of nothing but life jackets. They called the graveyard a life jacket graveyard, and stepped into the waters again, filled with life jackets just floating around. Is on ferry boats full of nothing but Muslims. Terrified for my life, to be frank.
It's happened
just-
before in Greece. They've dealt with
Yeah.
this before. In fact, it's happened. You know, it's just the same thing happening now. It's just like I said. The difference is you're not on horseback with a sword and openly shouting what they're doing. They're doing it secretively, using takia and other forms of trying to infiltrate our establishment in order to, you know, further the cause of Islam, which is worrying, definitely, because I've already seen videos of Muslim men marching through the streets of Germany, the streets of France, the streets of Sweden and Norway, calling for Sharia law in their thousands.
Yeah.
And it concerns me that I genuinely do believe if civic unrest doesn't come about, then something will take place in the future, which and this is the sad thing about us, especially the British. As tolerant as we are, we always wait until something happens, until there's, you know, a reaction. We're more reactionary than we are actionary. We used to be actionary when we had the empire, where we went out and you know, did what we did. However, now everything is upon reaction. So it's if something takes place, we'll change a law or we will change the way we are, if, you know, only if and when something bad takes place, which means someone has to be hurt, someone has to lose their life. And we've seen this too many times. And unfortunately, yes, everyone, I think, who is in my opinion and wearing my shoes with my opinions and values, has had enough, and they are ready to make change. They want change right now, but are not willing to stand on the streets just in case they get labeled or they lose their job. So you have to weigh up what's more important. Is it your beliefs, values, and what you hold dear to yourself, and you're going to stand for it? Or are you going to just sit and cower away until everyone else comes to the street and wait until something bad happens? And I believe that it's going to be, and I'll say this now, and I want to make sure that this gets remembered. It will be something similar to the Beslan massacre, which will take place, and it will be an attack on a scale like we've never seen before. Like it will make Southport look tiny. The attack in Southport looks small, and I reckon that will be the tipping point. That will be when Britain says, "That's it. Enough is enough."
Yeah, it's disheartening, but regardless, again, I always go here. I think it's for the sake of speaking of self-preservation. Regardless of what happens, what we're led to, what's going on around us, we just got to remain centered on Christ.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, and I don't what I don't want, and this is what I've been saying for a very long time, is that scenario which I've just depicted, that whole idea of civic unrest or civil war, is what we must avoid. And the only way we can avoid that, because that would be the biggest stain in history for us in modern times. So to avoid that, we need leaders. We need
Right.
strong leaders that
Yes.
are politicians that are going to change things and listen to the British people and go into government with a mandate. Go in there with a manifesto of things that we want changed.
Yeah, no, there's a Bible quote. I was going to look it up, but it's Old Testament. I actually, in my younger days, the United States was at war with Iraq, and this was I'm talking about a period when it was the coalition forces of the early '90s, when all the countries in the world united to, well, basically take on Iraq and end it quickly. I went into a Baptist church, and the preacher there was shouting an Old Testament verse that I've never heard before, something along the lines of "Crush the head of the serpent. To destroy the serpent, you've got to crush its head." So yeah, I don't take this out of context, and I'm speaking to your listeners here. What I'm saying here is exactly that. I mean, even Christ says at some point you've got to cut off and you got to pluck out. And that's for the sake of preserving the body. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, basically from the top down, Muslims have been not only allowed to come in, and this is I think it's a disservice when mass media goes on about how Muslims were allowed to do this. I think that's misinformation. I think what actually happened was Muslims were encouraged, not only invited, but encouraged to come in and also funded to come in and sustained after they came in. And when I say come in, I'm talking about all these countries, seems like worldwide. So, and this was bad leadership across the board. These leaders were all involved in this historical mass migration, this hijrah, this 21st century hijrah. That needs to change. Why they did it, I have my own theories. It doesn't really matter the why, I don't think. I think at this point, like you're saying, we've been put in a position that we're between a rock and a hard place. Darned if you do, darned if you don't.
Yeah.
We've got to choose, but my hope, I pray that everyone, regardless of what you do and how you do it, and you have to do something. We're already at civil war. We're already in civil unrest. But regardless of what you do, you put Christ in the forefront with every step that you take. And through Christ, we will be victorious.
Exactly. Well, we already know that Christ has already won.
Amen.
I mean, like I said, my channel is for both patriots and Christians. So some at the moment are what you will find in civic nationalism as well, is there are a lot of what they would call cultural Christians, which are now there is a huge revival in Christianity. People who are cultural Christians or call themselves cultural Christians, I don't believe in the term, but that are taking that extra step into Christianity. They're beginning to go to church, or they're beginning to get intrigued by what Christianity teaches, because they understand that it's under threat, and the only other option that possibly could come in the future is that of Islam. I just wanted to show something very quickly. So here is a diagram of the amount of fires, church fires, that have happened in France.
Mm. I
So
was
this
gonna.
is this is recent. So this is the church, all the churches that have been set on fire. Now we already know what happens when Islam decides to show its ugly face and goes to a country to conquer it. They burn the churches down. They burn the synagogues, the temples. It's taught in some of the hadiths, and there's verses about shitting on the Buddha's head, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
But just to look at this number, all these churches here, it's incredible. And there was another one more recently, a very important one, in France. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a very historic one that has just been set on fire.
You
And
know,
they'll never report on it and tell the truth as to who done it or why.
Yes. Yeah, again, mentioned earlier. Yeah, a couple of things I want to mention, like Paul Soloff and his work on the Sharia law. Yeah, exposing that piece by piece, going through all of the Sharia law, and talking about not only what the Quran says and culturally and so on, but literally what is enforced by law in these Muslim countries, especially the Sunni ones. But yeah, when it comes to France, I was actually going to mention earlier how during the 2020 lockdown, that video that many saw of the French finally having enough. I think it was actually this was around 21,
Was this the farmers'
22.
protests?
No, this was in protest of the forced lethal serums that they were doing after the lockdown.
Right.
They rolled this guillotine in front of one of the government buildings. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know about French government, but yeah. So the masses got together. They were protesting this stuff, and yeah, as soon as they rolled the guillotine, all of a sudden the tide started to turn.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should roll out a guillotine in front of your government building, but
No.
leadership does need to change a lot in these places that have brought in this tyrannical. Can I say tyrannical cult here? I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because look, at the end of the day, these statistics are fact. They're proof. It's not rhetoric. So they need to be addressed like the criminals that they are. And those that are supporting that, making excuses of that, are complicit. They're responsible for their behaviors.
And this is
Regardless.
another thing. This is another thing they've done in the United Kingdom. So what they've done with migration or migrants, they have hidden, and they will not release or publish. In fact, they deny that they have any statistics or data surrounding crimes committed by migrant men, whether it's sexual assaults, whether it's murder or any kind of crime. They are refusing to either release, or they even say, they go as far as saying they don't have any data. So we have to go on data off of the back of Denmark or some other country to see what's happening there per capita to work out the ratios. And it's even then, it's unreal. I think it was an Afghani is 22 point something times more likely to commit a sexual offense than someone who is
Wow.
British.
Yeah, there you go. And as far as the propaganda goes, the dawah, the kid dawah that we've all, I was raised, again, even though I'm Greek, and we Greeks have the history with the Ottomans and so on, 5 centuries of, again, the patriarchate, the ecumenical patriarchate, is still under Turkish yoke as we speak. Right. So, but yeah, despite that, I was raised in America with this mindset that, Islam is peaceful, be open-minded, these kinds of things. And
I
so
think we've learned with Bill Turner that or whatever his name was that I was just playing He's shown just the opposite of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so there was a guest on, for, I think it was the Cross the Crescent discussion group or Paul's Salifing report. I'm not sure, but she was a government agent. She still has her own government organization exposing these things, and she was talking about the Great Purge of the '90s, which literally went out to remove, rewrite history books, U.S. Public school textbooks, to remove anything that was quote unquote negative about Muslims. That's when Bush Jr. was it Bush Jr. Was coining the phrase "religion of peace" and things like that. So this is not accidental. This is not organic. This is not the left saying "kumbaya" and all of a sudden now we have these expressions. This was actually from the top down, is my point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that phrase has been repeated by the likes of Tony Blair, and this is where it come from. It's never come from the Middle East. Islam has never ever claimed to be a religion of peace. In fact, if you ask any scholar of Islam, in fact, Muhammad Hijab has even said so. Islam is a religion of conquest. He has said it. He said, "We are not a religion of peace. You're a bit mad to think so." He said, you know, and he is, as we know, a narcissistic, schizophrenic. I personally believe he is. In fact, we'll call him out again. Stop hiding, Muhammad Hijab. He has actually, believe it or not, decided to take on a guy called Paul Golding, who runs a political party called Britain First. And apparently they're going to have a fight. They're just trying to get it all legally finished and that. So he is Paul Golding's now jumping the queue. I made a video for it saying this isn't fair. You know, I've been waiting. How long have I been waiting now for Muhammad Hijab? Since that offer was out. What was it? It's been about 3 years now, hasn't it?
I don't know, but it's been a while.
It's been a while, and so yeah, I made a video and sent it to Britain First, and Paul. I haven't had a response from them. I haven't had a response from Momo neither. In fact, he's blocked me on Facebook. He's blocked me on all the socials. So it tells me that he's getting the message. He's getting the videos that I'm making, but he just doesn't want to respond. But there we go.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say this. I'm glad you brought that up too. I mean, it's exactly something I wanted to say earlier. That too demonstrates the reality of Muslims, of these. I'm not talking about, again, we need to be careful. We're not running around trying to terrorize all Muslims, because yes, Islam is an evil ideology, and therefore Muslims are a threat potentially. But at any rate, the ones that are aggressive, the ones that are running around being, like, for example, in Greece, the 2016-17, I've seen things like where a young Muslim couple, and I'm talking about, like, I don't know, early 20s, pushing around and mocking, and just horrendously, this old man by himself, defenseless, young lady, pregnant, has had 2 or 3 little kids, you know, and her husband. And she was just laughing it up. You know, if I knew then what I know now, well, thank God I didn't. I'll say that. But anyways, the point is that when you see things like this, there was going to have a fatwa. Some young Muslims were trying to rob an old man on a bus, and I stepped in, and yeah, basically they backed off. There was 4 of them, and
they will.
Yeah.
If you stand up to them. They always do.
Yeah, they back off, right? Every single time I've had that experience. Every time except for one. I had like maybe this Somali or Ethiopian Muslim and this other Muslim sitting at the park, and they were just glaring at me. I must have been wearing some USA kind of clothing or something. So yeah, I just at that point I wasn't quite. That was like, let's say, early 2016. I was still learning the truths about Islam, or I haven't quite yet, actually. Anyway, so I didn't know what to do with it, and finally I just kind of looked up at them as I was walking by and said hello with a smile, and they just gave me a glare like they wanted to kill me just for saying hello. So, but that was the only instance where aggressive Muslims did not back down. Every other time, and I mean every other time, they always back down. They come in and they pound their chest, and as soon as you stand up to them, they cower.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed that, and I've experienced that firsthand as well. I've seen videos of it as well. They have weak chins. There's a thing in boxing, and boxers will know this. If they watch this, they'll understand what I'm saying. They always say that they've got weak chins, especially
Yeah.
the Middle Eastern ones. That's why you never see many boxers from the Middle East. The fact that they're trying to hijack it now, and Saudi Arabia is trying to hijack absolutely everything, music, sports. They're trying to make everything theirs currently. But yeah, I think that's going to end in tears soon as well. By the way,
Yeah. Let me
but
just
yeah.
jump in. Let me make a correction because I don't want to mislead your audience and send them in the wrong direction. Just so everyone knows, I'm pretty well trained. I can fend for myself. I've actually put down an MMA fighter once who jumped me. I think he was on drugs. Anyway, so my point is that I can defend myself. I can literally kill someone with my hands in a matter of seconds. So I'm fully capable of defending myself. Why I take these liberties. Also, I'm completely single. I have no family. No one will miss me if I'm gone. I'm saying that so that. Yeah, I'm not
You got
saying that
nothing
everyone
to
should
lose.
run around. Yeah, I'm just saying that so everyone understands that you should. I'm not saying you should go run around now and get in the face of Muslims. Please don't put that in your
No,
head.
of course not. No, like I
Yeah.
said, there's a difference between the ideology and the person. The person is a human being, and the ideology is an ideology. And I always insult or criticize, and you're open to and allowed by law to openly criticize and talk about an ideology, whereas a human or a being that is living is a completely different thing, separate argument. So we're not talking about Muslims, we're talking about Islam.
Amen.
And when I'm saying about the weak chin thing, that's just something that's known in boxing. It's just it's a phrase that everyone who does boxing knows about it.
And
Well, most
boxing is a sport.
people,
By the way.
yeah, it's like a lad's thing. It's how can I explain it? It's just a thing. It just is. It is what it is. People know
Yeah.
about it. It just
Well, some of us are hot-blooded, so boxing for those that are hot-blooded is a good outlet for that steam. So,
yeah.
good
There
healthy
you
outlet,
go.
I think.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. So I'll leave it at that. I do want to say one more thing though.
Yeah,
On the
go
back of
for
that.
it.
Yeah, this is probably a very bad segue for that, but yeah, I mean, just to go back to that, just to revisit that. I hope people understand. Yeah, again, I'm completely against violence, but when you are as patriotic Christian here is demonstrating, pointing out quite well, is that when you're put in a place where you have no choice, then well, you have no choice. But yeah, outside of that, just again, regardless, keep Christ in mind. So on the back of that, I want to say a quote recently. I got on Hatun's channel and Hatun Tosh. I don't
Yeah.
know. I can't remember. I think it's DCI ministry or something like that. I can't remember what it's called.
DCCI, yeah.
Thank you. So basically, they were talking about exactly this. The whole discussion about ICE and getting Muslims out of the countries, different countries, whatever the case may be. My response is, okay, well, you get rid of them, you send them out, and then what? Well, you send them to where? And then what happens after that? I think this whole rhetoric of just fixating on nothing but getting them out of the country is it's a fool's errand. Again,
Yeah,
I
just
think
getting rid of them is, yeah. To be fair, it's like what I said earlier. The way I would deal with it is, but outlaw the ideology. And
yes,
if they wanted to leave, then you allow them and pay for them to choose where they want to go, and you allow them to pick a destination, a country, and you try and have some kind of agreement with that country, and let them go there, and you pay for their ticket as well. You know, but I wouldn't say I would never say you have to deport every Muslim. I would say ban the ideology. And that should itself, if you outlawed it, it should itself in practice. Well, if you can't practice it, you would either want to move or choose to move, or you have the freedom to just not practice it and maybe look into Christianity or another faith or none at all. And I genuinely do believe there would be a high percentage of the community, the Islamic community, that would actually end up staying and choosing a different religion rather than moving. I honestly do. I reckon that it would make them face reality as to who, you know, I've been sat on the fence for a long time. Some of them might think, do you know what? I already drink, I already smoke. I love this country. I don't want to live where there's Sharia law. Do I actually want to follow Islam? Do I actually want to be Muhammad or follow his ways? And I think it would make them question a lot more. There wouldn't be no rush as to deport them all, you know, get them all out. Of course, I would say deport the ones that are on the watch list, terror watch list, deport the ones that are currently in prison, and have a zero tolerance policy on those that are already here that commit crime. They are gone. However, prohibit the ideology from being practiced and offer a solution if they want to continue practicing it, which would be go to a different country. Because we here in Britain are a Christian nation. We should put that up at the front. And if there is an ideology which has caused harm to others, or it has caused, like, not just once or twice, but we're talking on a scale like we already have gone through, it has to be spoken about. It has to be. We have already seen the discussion and debates around, does Islam fit or can it coexist with a Western democratic nation? And the answer simply is no. So if that is the case, then why are there not people talking about the solution? What is the solution? And that's what I'm saying is the kindest solution is prohibit the ideology, but let them stay. However, give them a choice. If they want to continue it, they can. Just not here. Just not yet.
Yep, pack them up, send them to Mecca. I mean, that's their holy place, right? We got Zamzam water and everything they need.
Well,
quite humane.
And here's the problem: is that there's lots of leaders that are from Mecca and you know that region that wouldn't accept most of these people. But they, in fact, they say that we've imported the garbage. I've seen videos of leaders say such and warn. Remember that video from 2017, the Saudi Arabia leader who sat there and said, in a few years' time, you're going to regret this. You are literally importing the people we don't want. He said that.
Wow.
He said, you think you understand Islam better than we do. He said, you must be mad.
I think, I want to get into the whys. Yeah. Let me just say the quote. Yeah, in this discussion about outlawing Islam, she posited that, that's not the solution. I think she meant to say, and I don't want to speak for her, but let's give it a benefit of the doubt and say that she meant to say that's not the solution itself, because she followed it up with, we need to replace Islam with something else. In other words, the peace of Christ, as she says, the love of Christ, Christianity in essence. In other words, if you just basically outlaw Islam, then what's left, some might just stick to secularism, that become libtards. So, I mean, is that any better? So, yeah, I think, I would say it is a two-step, at least a two-step thing. You do have to start with the obvious and making it outlawed. Make it just like Antifa, not allowed, and then absolutely, at least bring to their attention, exposure the truths of Christianity, not the mass media version.
Let me just, I've got it here. I've got the actual clip of that Arab leader.
Cool.
I just want to play it. It's not a long one. I'll just play it quickly.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he just said that was in 2017. And off the back of that, we've imported, I would say, at least maybe 3 million. People talk about illegal immigration all the time, the boats, the dinghies that come here on a daily basis, but they never talk about the legal immigration. They never talk about the secret and quiet immigration that's taking place, which is in the form of Palestinian immigration, Afghani immigration. And then when they were caught out, which was another scandal our Labour government have done last year, which has suddenly just been swept under the carpet and forgotten about, like most things in Britain. They were caught out that they basically imported and had, I think it was over 100,000 Afghanis here, and they did it in the quiet of the night without anyone noticing.
Wow.
And they put them here, there, and everywhere without anyone knowing, not even the news. And this is the problem, and it proves further to the point that Tommy Robinson has made, which is the government or the establishment work hand in hand with the mainstream media. They allow them or disallow them to as to what they are allowed to put into the public focus. So they work together. That's why there has been a surge of independent journalism. People turning to YouTube, creating channels, creating their own news and showing people on the ground what's really taking place, because they don't rely on the establishment anymore. They don't trust the mainstream media or the narratives that they push out, because it's all biased, it's all controlled by the elites, and people are awoken to that now. That's why this year, that's why I said 2026, you're going to see people not just wanting change like they did last year, but making change happen.
Yeah, good strength with that. And if I may, forgive me if I talk about you third person. I want to say this at the beginning, but for those who are listening, pray for our brother here. For those who have greater faith than I, pray for his healing. We need people like him to stick around.
Yeah, well, only God can do that, but or see that through. But anyway, I'm going to end the stream. We have been going for a good, I don't even know, quite a
3.5
while.
hours.
Yeah, which usually happens when I do a live stream. So, but anyway, it's nice to speak with you again, Nico.
Likewise.
And you're always welcome to come on here. I've seen that you was in the live chat, and I thought I'd bring you on at the end. But yeah, get hold of me by email, and we'll definitely do something in the future.
Sure.
Okay, but for I'll say goodbye to you now, and I'll get in touch with me by email, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care, Nico. So there we have it, guys. So we've explored the real face and the truth of Islam. You have seen the so-called golden age be exposed as to what really happened. You have also learned about the Muslim Brotherhood and the memorandum, and why we should prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization or entity. However, we must have these discussions. We must hold these debates, because if we do not, then we will fall. We will fall. We already know what's taking place. You know it. I know it. And that the fact the establishment is trying to restrict our speech and restrict us from having these conversations, or making it dangerous to do so, shows also how totalitarian our government has become towards its people. As I was saying to my good friend just then, 2025 was the year of awakening, and 2026 is the year of action. I encourage and tell everyone that make 2026 the year for you to put on your boots, to take to the streets, not in a violent way, but in a peaceful manner, to protest, to call out the tyranny, to push for what you want, discuss the topics that may not be that tasteful, but that need to be held. And with that, only then change will come about. We have to have discussions that are uncomfortable in order for us to change and move forward and make Britain great again. So anyway, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. I have plenty of things to do. God bless. Take care. The Patriotic Christian.